Kicking off at number 5, the SS Baychimo. Now, although many tales of ghost ships and their legend are mired in murky mystery and spotty historical records, this one is perhaps one of the most well-documented cases of a ghost ship in nautical history. Built in Sweden in the year 1914, the SS Baychimo was used as a trading vessel for routes between Hamburg and Sweden in and throughout the First World War. After the war, though, it was shipped over to Canada, where it was employed by the Hudson's Bay Company, carrying cargo throughout the Arctic region. There, on October 1st, 1931, during a routine voyage, a devastating storm blew in, and the Baychimo was trapped in pack ice just off the coast of Alaska. The crew quickly abandoned ship, traveling over the ice to the nearest town of Barrow, Alaska, where they took shelter. Several days later, after the storm had subsided, the crew returned to retrieve their precious cargo, only to find that the SS Baychimo had disappeared. Her captain decided that she must have broken up during the storm and sunk, but a few days later, an Inuit seal hunter told the captain that he had spotted the Baychimo nearly 50 miles away from their initial position. As the story goes, the Baychimo didn't sink at all, and for several decades after her abandonment, she sailed the Arctic coast completely unmanned. In fact, the SS Baychimo was seen on numerous occasions throughout the following century, and several crews even managed to board her. In fact, the last recorded sighting was by a group of Inuit in 1969, a staggering 38 years after she was abandoned. Her ultimate fate? No one knows, but it's safe to say that somewhere out there in the frozen north, the SS Baychimo is still sailing. Next up at number 4, the Jenny. Now, this one is a little bit murkier, to say the least, and historical accounts have varied from person to person. One thing always remains the same though: if the accounts are true, then this nautical tale is perhaps one of the most bleakest and most despairing cases of a crew being lost at sea. As the story goes, the Jenny, an English schooner that set sail from its home port of the Isle of Wight in 1822, became frozen in an ice barrier just off the Drake Passage sometime in its voyage in 1823. Nearly a decade later, in 1840, the stark remains of the ship had been dislodged by the ice, only to be discovered by a nearby whaling ship. As some accounts tell, when the crew first saw the ship, they saw 7 figures standing to attention on the main deck, and so thought that the vessel was manned. As they got closer though, they discovered the grim truth. The 7 figures standing to attention were in fact frozen in place, turned to ice by the Arctic cold. Things only got worse from there though, and as the crew of the whaling ship explored the vessel, they found more and more bodies frozen in time deeper below the deck. As some reports go, as the crew came to the captain's cabin, they found him frozen in place with a pen in his hand. The final note written in his log read, May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. Yeah, spooky stuff. Coming in at number 3, the SS Valencia. Now, this one's a little bit more interesting, to say the least, because it's a verified fact that the wreckage of the SS Valencia can still be seen to this day, scattered along the beach and rocky shoreline of Vancouver Island's West Coast Trail. After the ship struck a reef during a storm in 1906, the wreckage of the SS Valencia was considered to be the worst maritime disaster along the western North American coast, otherwise known as the Graveyard of the Pacific. The Valencia was a small ship, a passenger steamer that had a long history of carrying both passengers, cargo and troops, but at the time of her ruin, she was operating as a tour boat, often running routes from San Francisco and up to Seattle. During the wreckage, tragically 136 souls were lost, with rescue efforts unable to access the Valencia in the ravaging storm. But our ghostly tale lies with those that tried to escape. You see, as the legend goes, in panic the crew launched all of the Valencia's lifeboats, going against the captain's orders, all of which went horribly wrong. 3 flipped on descent, dozens more capsized after reaching the water, and the last one disappeared out into the waves. Since the disaster of the SS Valencia, countless sailors and fishermen have reported sightings of these lifeboats listlessly floating upon the water during particularly calm days at sea. As some of the tales go, these lifeboats are still filled with the skeletal remains of the lost souls of the SS Valencia. Next up at number 2, the Copenhagen. And it's quite the title really, because the Copenhagen is considered by most to be one of the greatest maritime mysteries of the modern era, with only whispers, rumours and speculation as to its ultimate fate. Built for the Danish East Asiatic Trading Company in 1921, it was the world's largest sailing ship at the time, and primarily served as a sail training vessel for young cadets. In the eyes of many, it was the most impressive sailing ship ever built. However, as the story goes, on September 21st, 1928, 1958, the Copenhagen departed from northern Jutland for Buenos Aires on its 10th and ultimately final voyage. A total of 75 people were aboard, and the journey was planned to span all the way to Melbourne, Australia, and then back to Europe. But tragically, as we know, it was never seen again. The thing was though, the captain of the ship, Hans Andersen, was renowned for going long periods at sea without sending any messages, and so it wasn't until nearly 6 months later that the Danish company sent a search party. No wreckage or remains have ever been found. However, following the next several years of the Copenhagen's disappearance, there were a number of highly reputable sightings of a 5-masted ship that fit perfectly its description. In July of 1930, the crew of an Argentine freighter cited what they referred to as a phantom ship during a gale. Their captain noted in his records that this may be the Wrath of the Copenhagen. Dozens of stories and tales have perpetuated around the ultimate fate of the Copenhagen, but the truth is, we may never know. In all likelihood though, it's still out there, somewhere, floating on the endless tide. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, the Seabird. And this story is the literal definition of a ghost ship and one of the most saltiest sea yarns that I've heard spun in a while. Although this one has a few more twists and turns that you may not have first seen coming. As the legend goes, in the year 1750, a vessel named the Seabird was idling off the coast of Newport Harbour in Rhode Island and had quickly attracted quite a crowd on the shore due to its elaborate craftsmanship. Soon enough though, the crowd of onlookers noticed that there was something strange about the Seabird. There was no one manning the ship, not a soul in sight. As the legend goes, several moments later, the ship, as if by a supernatural wind, perfectly sailed itself through the rough breakers of the beach, gently landing on the nearby Easton's beach. There, a few brave souls boarded the vessel, only to find the Seabird completely deserted, save for a boiling kettle on the stove, and strangely enough, breakfast already prepared at the table. Now, some accounts state that a group of fishermen had passed the Seabird a few hours before and had even spoken to the captain themselves. Where had the crew gone? What had happened in the few hours that had passed since their last sighting? The truth of it is that no one may ever know, and such is the nature of ghostly tales from the sea. But, well, this is where things get a little stranger still, and take this final caveat with a pinch of sea salt. But as the legend goes, decades later, an old sailor reported to a New England journalist his deepest, darkest secret. In a fit of rage, he had murdered his entire crew just before making port, throwing their bodies into the ocean. And the name of that ship? Well, the Seabird, of course. Kicking off at number 5, the Kaz II, which perhaps is one of the most terrifying modern instances of the term ghost ship and one of the most profoundly tragic unsolved mysteries of the deep blue sea. The Kaz II, which was publicly dubbed the Ghost Yacht, was a 9.8 meter catamaran which was found drifting listlessly 88 nautical miles off the northeastern coast of Australia on the 20th of April 2007. The 3 men aboard, who were all residents of Perth in Western Australia, were all incredibly experienced sailors. They were 56-year-old Derek Batten and brothers Peter Tunstall and James Tunstall, who were 69 and 63 respectively. Their whereabouts still remains a mystery to this day, and the fate of these 3 men perhaps may never be known. What made it even stranger is that when the Kaz II was eventually found by the Coast Guard, there were no signs of distress, no signs of boat damage, or even a struggle between the 3 men. It was as if they just vanished out of thin air. Coffee cups were left out and all the life jackets on board remained stowed away, indicating that the trio never felt at risk. In an even more curious turn of events, rescue teams discovered video footage of the 3 men on a handheld camera, seemingly hours before they disappeared. It showed them fishing, relaxing in the sun with the motor off, and offered no clues as to how these 3 experienced sailors disappeared at sea. Although an inquiry was later drawn, no definitive conclusions were ever reached, and only theories remain about the ultimate fate of the Kaz II. Coming in at number 4, the Lady Loverbond. Of course, no list would be complete without a good old sea shanty of jilted lovers and ghostly revenge. As the legend goes, the Lady Loverbond was a schooner that is alleged to have been wrecked on the Goodwin Sands just off the southern coast of Kent on the 13th of February 1749. But if you ask any old sailor worth their salt, they'll tell you that it just so happens to have a habit of reappearing every 50 or so years as a ghost ship. As the story goes, the captain of the ship, a man named Simon Reed, had just been married to his bride Aneta and was celebrating the joyous occasion with a cruise bound for Oporto in Portugal. Now, it is high time to mention that a long-standing sailor's superstition was that back in the day, it was grave bad luck to bring a woman on board, and in many ways, the legend of the Lady Loverbond is a cautionary tale that exemplifies that fact. According to the tale, the ship's first mate, a man named John Rivers, was a rival for the hand of the captain's young wife, and in a jealous fit of rage, he killed the crewman manning the ship's wheel and steered the vessel into the treacherous Goodwin Sands, killing absolutely everyone on board. And if you're asking me, that is a stark overreaction. But nevertheless, since that fateful day in 1749, the Lady Loverbond has been sighted on numerous occasions with an ethereal, ghostly glow, eternally bound to wander the ocean. Next up at number 3, the Mary Celeste, which in fact may very well be the world's most infamous ghost ship, as well as one of the longest enduring mysteries of the seven seas. Built in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia in 1861 and launched under the new name of the Mary Celeste in 1868, this merchant brigantine sailed uneventfully across the Atlantic for years as a seaworthy, efficient vessel. It wasn't until her fateful voyage in 1872 where the true ghostly legend began, which has since gathered theories that vary from submarine earthquakes, water spouts, an attack by a giant squid, and even paranormal intervention. No one will truly know the ultimate fate of the Mary Celeste, with every single soul on board never being seen or heard from again, which is a terrifying thought in itself, isn't it? The Mary Celeste was discovered adrift and deserted just off the coast of the Azores Islands on December 5th, 1872. It was a Canadian vessel, the De Gratia, which found her in a disheveled but seaworthy condition under partial sail and with one lifeboat missing. The last entry in the ship's log was dated 10 days earlier, which detailed the vessel's last known location, before these mysterious, infamous events unfolded. On board was the ship's captain, Benjamin S. Briggs, his wife Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 8 seasoned crew members, all veterans of the sea. It poses the question, what dire threat did the Mary Celeste face that caused a highly experienced captain to abandon his ship? Nothing was stolen, all of the crew's possessions and cargo were exactly as they'd left them, but in all likelihood, we may never know. Swinging in at number 2, the Flying Dutchman. Of course, this legendary vessel couldn't not make this list. The ghost ship that can tragically never make port, doomed to navigate the perilous ocean for eternity. In actual fact though, the Flying Dutchman has had such an impact on nautical culture that it's easy to overlook the treacherous tale of its origin. It is thought that the legend of the Flying Dutchman first originated from the 17th century golden age of the Dutch East India Trade Company, a mega corporation that had a stranglehold monopoly on the Dutch spice trade that ran throughout the 16 and 1700s, where tale was told of a Dutch man of war that was lost just off the Cape of Good Hope. Purportedly, every soul on board perished after being ravaged by a violent tempest. The following few days, numerous other trading ships reported seeing a ghostly, ethereal vessel out in the foggy mist of the ocean, flying the exact same colours as the Dutch vessel. Since then, the Flying Dutchman has gathered notoriety as the worst omen you could ever hope for of a phantom ship that heralds the demise of an entire crew, with sightings continuing all the way into the 19th and 20th centuries. In fact, perhaps the most recognised sighting was by King George V himself during a 3-year voyage in 1881 just off the coast of Australia. He noted in his personal log that 13 people had seen the same glowing Flying Dutchman in the early hours of the morning, and later in the day, the ordinary crewman who had spotted the vessel fell from the foremast and, in his words, was smashed to atoms. It's a little bit worrying, that one, eh? And finally, our number 1 spot, the Ourang Medan. And where do we even begin with the bizarre, perplexing legend of the Ourang Medan, perhaps the most terrifyingly unexplainable instances of a ghostly shipwreck in history? But, well, the leading physical theory of the Ourang Medan may be even more horrifying than it first appears. As the legend goes, at some time in June 1947, an American vessel by the name of the Silver Star picked up several distress calls from a nearby Dutch merchant ship, the Ourang Medan. A radio operator aboard the troubled vessel sent a message in Morse code. In rushed, confused dots and dashes, it read, "We float. All officers, including the captain, dead in chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead." And then a few moments later, after even more confused dots and frantic dashes, 2 words came through very clearly. "I die. Then silence. Nothing more was heard of them. But well, when the Silver Star eventually located and boarded the apparently undamaged and otherwise seaworthy Ourang Medan, what they found absolutely horrified them. Every single person aboard was found dead, sprawled on their backs, frozen in fear with their mouths gaping open and their eyes staring straight ahead. There were no survivors, but even more terrifying, apparently no signs of injury or foul play. Just as the Silver Star crew was preparing to tow the ship to a nearby port, a fire broke out in the Ourang Medan, which shortly exploded before finally sinking into the depths. Since this horrifying incident, theories have ranged from the vessel carrying a highly dangerous chemical nerve agent to an entanglement with the CIA after the result of a secret experiment to an unprovoked alien assault. But if you haven't already sensed a theme with this particular list, it seems that we may never know.
Coming in at number 5, we have Titan triggerfish. These fish are known to be quite aggressive to their prey, and they tend to bite divers who come too close to their nests. These fish are among the largest species of triggerfish, and they are commonly found in lagoons and at reefs deep in the ocean, stretching from Australia to Thailand. Their diet consists of sea urchins, crustaceans, tube worms, and coral. It often feeds by turning over rocks, stirring up sand, and biting off pieces of branching coral. They don't typically feed on other fish, but they've been observed being aggressive and attacking other fish who enter their territory. Along with being aggressive, naturally they get extremely aggressive during the reproduction season when the female is guarding its nest, which is placed in a flat and sandy area and looks roughly cone-shaped. If you dive down and come in contact with the female fish near her nest, it will defend its eggs at all costs, often exposing its erect dorsal spine and swimming rapidly towards you to attack. It is suggested to swim horizontally away from the danger zone rather than going up to the surface right away. Triggerfish can grow up to 30 inches, and their size and oval shape make them very recognizable, along with their threatening looking teeth, and have evolved as an apex predator within their natural habitat. If you're on vacation and are planning to go scuba diving or snorkeling, be careful not to swim near coral reefs because they tend to swim around there, and if you get too close they will attack and bite you. The Titan triggerfish bites are not venomous, they are extremely painful and can cause serious injury. Coming in at number 4, we have flower urchin. Yes, it has a nice name, but it is anything but that. It is considered to be the most dangerous urchin in the world. This urchin has flower-like patterning and are usually a pinkish white to yellowish white colouring with a central purple dot, and that's how it got its beautiful name. They tend to live in coral reefs, seagrass and sandy environments lower down towards the ocean floor, and it feeds on algae, bryozoans and organic detritus, and can grow to a maximum diameter of 15 to 20 centimeters. They reside from Japan all the way to Australia and in the Red Sea to the East African coast. Flower urchins are among the numerous species of sea urchins known as collector urchins, and they often cover their upper body with debris from their surroundings to camouflage from others. They're usually covered in objects like dead coral fragments, shells, seaweeds and rocks. If you just simply touch this creature, it can deliver excruciatingly painful stings that can result in hospitalization. It can cause paralysis of the tongue, lips, eyes and muscles, faintness, difficulty breathing, and the inability to speak. A scientist named Tsutomu Fujiwara, who was once stung by the flower urchin, described feeling like he was going to die. So when in the ocean, beware of your surroundings and make sure not to touch this urchin. Another account of someone being stung by these dangerous creatures was the drowning of a pearl diver after being rendered unconscious from accidental contact with a flower urchin. Again, if you're going to be swimming, snorkeling or deep sea diving in the ocean, be very careful you don't come into contact with these beautiful yet dangerous creatures. Coming in at number 3, we have the blue-ringed octopus. This creature is beautiful looking and easily recognizable due to their yellow skin and blue and black rings, but it's one of the deadliest species of small octopus in the ocean, and scientists have even classified them as one of the world's most dangerous animals. To the eye, this creature is beautiful, but their blue and black rings around their bodies change dramatically when they become threatened. Despite only being 5 to 8 inches in size, their venom is extremely powerful and can be very dangerous to humans if they're provoked. If stung, it can result in a number of things such as nausea, respiratory arrest, heart failure, blindness, total body paralysis, and can lead to death within a few minutes if not treated, or could cause drowning due to the results of the venom, and the inability to swim to the surface. In order to come in contact with the creature's venom, you would have to come into direct contact with the octopus. When faced with danger, the octopus's first instinct is to flee, but if the threat persists, they will then go into a defensive stance and display its blue rings. If the octopus is cornered or touched, the person person would be in danger of being bitten and stung by its deadly venom. They are named one of the deadliest sea creatures for a reason, because despite them being such a small animal, they carry enough venom in their bodies to kill up to 26 humans within just a few minutes. These terrifying sea creatures feed crabs, shrimp, and other small animals. They reside in tide pools and coral reefs in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, from Japan to Australia, and their species tend to only live around 2 to 3 years, but this may vary based on their nutrition, temperature, and intensity of light. Be extremely careful when in the ocean. Be sure to watch out for these terrifying creatures. They would be easy to see due to their bright colours, but if spotted, swim away fast before you get attacked. Coming in at number 2, the box jellyfish. This is a species of jellyfish that usually tops the list of the most dangerous sea creatures in the world, and the world's most venomous creature. At first look, its appearance isn't too threatening, but if stung, it is life-threatening. The sting can result in death in less than 5 minutes. The most recent death from a box jellyfish sting was in February 2021 to a man who passed away 10 days after being stung while swimming at Cape York Beach in Australia. Before that, the last known fatality was in 2007, and total of 79 deaths since the first report in 1883, and that's just in Australia alone. In the Philippines, there are far more fatalities, with up to 40 deaths annually. In Thailand, after a man died in 2014 from a box jellyfish sting, they enhanced their first aid stations on beaches, but yet the next year 2 more fatalities occurred due to this deadly sea creature. Unlike some jellyfish, the box jellyfish can swim, which means they're capable of hunting for prey and can move through the ocean at a very fast pace of up to 8 miles per hour. They actively hunt their prey, which tend to be smaller fish and invertebrates, including prawns and baitfish. Unfortunately, the box jellyfish has many enemies like crabs, different species of turtles, rabbitfish, batfish, and butterfish, but their swift swimming and venomous stings help themselves stay alive. An interesting fact about box jellyfish is that in Hawaii, the number of box jellyfish peak after a full moon, which is apparently when they come near the shore to spawn. So if you're thinking of going for a swim in the ocean during a beautiful full moon, I'd advise to just wait until the next day, because you don't want to ruin a nice vacation with a fatal box jellyfish sting. No one wants to ruin a vacation by dying. That would suck. And finally, in at number 1, we have cone snail. Just by looking at this little snail sitting in its shell, you wouldn't think it would be dangerous or harmful at all. Their shells are beautiful looking, with colourful and complex patterns on its shell, but don't be fooled, you should never handle this snail. It is one of the most venomous sea snails in the ocean. There are over 600 species of these cone snails all around the world, and they are extremely toxic. The most dangerous species to humans are the slightly larger ones, but pretty much all cone snails are capable of stinging if handled or stepped on, and can be very fatal to humans. Cone snails use a hypodermic needle-like modified radula tooth, and their toxic venom gland is used to attack and paralyze their prey instantly before eating them. The tooth is hollow and barbed and is attached to the tip of the radula inside the snail's throat. When the snail detects an animal nearby that it wants to feed on, it extends a long flexible tube called a proboscis towards their prey, and the radula tooth is loaded with their toxic venom from their venom bulb and is fired into the prey by a powerful muscular contraction. It's like gleeking. They tend to be found in all tropical and subtropical seas in deep areas near rocks and coral reefs. These toxic creatures are carnivorous and predatory, and they feed on small bottom-dwelling fish, marine worms, and even other cone snails. If you're going to swim in the ocean, you shouldn't really ever come in contact with these venomous creatures due to them living on the ocean floor. But if they ever wash up on the shore, be careful if you're collecting shells from your vacation, and make sure you don't pick up any cone shells just in case there's a snail living inside, because it could be deadly. Only 1 drop of their venom can kill up to 20 people. So when swimming in the oceans, be careful and watch out for all these deadly creatures. This is why I never go in the ocean, everything wants to kill you. Coming in at number 5, we have colossal squid. The colossal squid, which is not seen by many humans unless they have washed up on shore, they are considered to be the largest and heaviest squid species in the sea, weighing a total of 1,500 pounds and having a length of 33 feet long, as well as being the most elusive and mysterious creatures of the deep sea. The species were first discovered in 1925 when 2 colossal squid arms were found in a sperm whale's stomach. Then in 1981 another one was discovered, and finally in 2003 the colossal squid was collected for further research of this new and crazy species of squid. But to this day very little is known about this deep sea creature. These squids are also known to have the largest eyes out of the entire animal kingdom, being larger than a human head. Unlike other squid species, have hooks on their arms which are very muscular and strongly attached to their arms, and it's said these hook-like things are used to help the squid hold and immobilize surprise struggling prey. Sounds like a horror movie death to me. Due to them being so far down in the sea, little is known about them and their behaviors, but what is known is that they prey on sperm whales. Yes, these creatures are fearless. They see a massive whale and say that's breakfast, which is terrifying. Only a few have been caught, and those couple that have been put on display at the Museum of New Zealand in December 2008. So if you're planning a trip to New Zealand, I would definitely suggest going to see this massive specimen, because the likelihood of you coming into contact with this squid while swimming is slim to none. But then again, why would you ever want to get close to this thing while going for a swim? Coming in at number 4, we have Atlantic wolffish. The Atlantic wolffish comes with a lot of nicknames, otherwise known as the Atlantic catfish, sea cat, wolf eel, ocean catfish, sea wolf, and the most fitting, the devilfish. Their blue-like appearance makes them stand out from many of the other fish species in the deep sea. Besides their unique appearance, wolffish actually naturally produce antifreeze to keep their blood flowing due to their extremely cold environment. One good thing about these scary creatures is that they help control the crab and sea urchin populations, which tend to get out of hand quickly and can have a negative effect on the health of a marine system. They have several fang-like teeth in the front, followed by 3 more rows of teeth inside their powerful and crushing jaws. Even their throats are armed with serrated teeth. If that's not terrifying enough, they can grow as long as a fully grown human is tall, so about 6 feet give or take. Their diets consist of large hermit crabs, starfish, crustaceans, large whelks, and sea urchins. These hideous creatures are known for their quick strikes and even quicker kills, because being a part of the deep sea community is a fish eat fish world down there, and thankfully we are safe from them up here on land. In fact, the numbers of Atlantic wolffish in the US are actually depleting due to the overfishing, and according to the National Marine Fisheries Service, they are currently considered a species of concern. If you're an avid fisher in the Atlantic Ocean, try to steer clear from these creatures and let them do their own thing. Coming in at number 3, deep sea dragonfish. This is probably one of the ugliest fish I've ever seen, which is why it fits perfectly on this list, and that is the deep sea dragonfish. Sometimes referred to as the scaleless dragonfish, this hideous creature looks like something straight out of a horror movie, with its sharp transparent teeth, slimy skin, and enormous mouth which can open more than 100 degrees. Even though it's not the biggest creature of the deep sea, that doesn't stop it from eating prey 50 times its size, and that is beyond scary. This creature's teeth are stronger than the teeth of some of the fiercest fish predators like piranhas and even great white sharks. The dragonfish is a ferocious predator and can actually produce its own light through a chemical process known as bioluminescence, but when he's not hunting prey, he can easily disappear into the darkness of the deep sea and lurk in his habitat, 1600 feet under the surface of the ocean. The deep sea is the darkest and deepest corner of the ocean, with crushing pressure and lack of oxygen and light. It makes it extremely difficult for anything to survive down there. Thankfully, this predator is deep down in the ocean, and hopefully none of us will ever come in contact with this hideous water monster. Coming in at number 2, we have frilled shark. The frilled shark is often called the living fossil due to its appearance, looking like a massive prehistoric eel. They have a dark brown exterior and are almost 7 feet long. These creatures are terrifying due to their 40 rows of curved, razor-sharp teeth, which is a total of about 300 teeth. First discovered in 1876 by zoologist Ludwig Dodelin, who classified this creature as a discrete species of shark, and a few years later, after much research, it was later named its own species in the shark family, given a name because of its frilly-looking gills, and today there are 2 different types of species of the frilled shark. Regardless of how many species there are, I don't want to come in contact with any of them. This creature tends to live in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and don't tend to come into contact with humans, but a handful of times they have been accidentally caught by commercial fishermen. Thankfully, you probably will never come into contact with this terrifying creature, because the closest they've come to the ocean surface is 390 feet deep, but typically they reside more than 3 times that depth. They live very close to the ocean floor and survive off of cephalopods, bony fish, and smaller sharks. When hunting for food, these creatures move similar to an eel, lunging and bending to capture their prey and continue to swallow them whole with their long and flexible jaws and of course their massive amounts of teeth. Due to the creatures living in the deep sea, they are rarely seen, and for good reasons, but there was rare footage that came out in 2007 of one. If you're not too scared, you can go check it out after this video. And finally, in at number 1, we we have stonefish. They are known to live in the tropical Pacific and Indian Oceans, and these deep sea creatures have perfect camouflage to look like a rock on the floor of a coral reef. So even if you somehow were around one, you probably wouldn't even notice it was a fish. They are close relatives to the scorpion fishes and consume other reef fishes and some seafloor invertebrates. They don't actively hunt their prey, they just wait for their prey to come to them, waiting hours at a time, and when their potential target is less than their body length away, they will strike. They have some of the most powerful jaws and very large mouths that create so much pressure they are able to easily trap their unsuspecting prey and swallow them whole. This creature is the most venomous fish in the world. It has 13 spines along its back that can release the venom, and this can kill a human within a few hours. They have a potent neurotoxin secreted from glands at the base of their needle-like dorsal fin spines, which they stick up when disturbed or threatened. The more venom that is injected into you, the worse it will be. Their stings cause terrible pain, swelling, necrosis, and then of course death. These horrifying creatures are actually considered a delicacy in many parts of Asia, such as Japan and China. They are usually cooked ginger and put into a clear soup, but could also be served raw as sashimi. As long as they're prepared correctly and their dorsal fins are removed, they are a dense and sweet snack and considered by many to be good for your health. If you're swimming in the ocean, you thankfully won't come in contact with this killer fish creature because they live on the ocean floor, so you won't have to worry. But if you're curious about the stonefish, you can check out more about it on the show River Monsters. They did an episode in 2017. Even though the stonefish isn't the largest creature in the deep sea, it's their venom that makes them the most terrifying. They don't use their venom to catch prey, but it's quite effective when they are threatened and can turn away even the strongest potential predators.
Number 5. 54 hands. In cartoons, you know, Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, that kind of thing, they're always fishing out stock garbage, like a fish skeleton or maybe a boot, and I always thought that was pretty funny. You know, imagine pulling up just a totally random thing out of the water. I imagine it's a lot less funny in real life though, pulling up severed body parts or 54 severed body parts, you know, kind of like pieces of a terrible puzzle. In 2018, fishermen in the Baychimo channel of the Amur River made a horrifying discovery when they fished up a bag containing 54 severed human hands. I think we can all agree that's probably one of the worst things ever that you could probably fish up. That's gotta be very low at the bottom. At first they pulled up a single hand, and that would have been enough to make this list, and then the fishermen shortly pulled up 53 other severed hands in a little sack. Someone out there is missing a collection, clearly. Now, I don't know a ton about Siberia's wildlife, but severed hands aren't indigenous to Siberia's rivers and lakes, meaning someone put them here. Investigators gave no clues as to who the hands might have belonged to at one point or why they were all discarded in this manner. The hands were wrapped in plastic shoe covers and bandages, and police took fingerprints from the hands to see if maybe they could be traced, maybe they could get some back to their owners. Now, theories about why 54 severed hands in a bag washed up have unsurprisingly prompted a lot of wild speculation. Really, you can kind of take your pick where you want to go with this. Severed as part of some punishment of a crime syndicate, a lone lunatic with a collection, some sort of demonic satanic ritual, or is it something deeply macabre but explainable? Now, a prevailing theory from local police is that the hands came from a medical scenario, and that means amputations, cadavers, students, does not nearly begin to explain how 54 of them ended up in a bag and then in the river though. And to think they'd probably still be there if it wasn't the right hook at the right time. Weird thing to think about. And if you're looking for way more videos about scary sea creatures, they don't all have to be hands. We got loads and loads more on the channel. We love freaky stuff deep beneath the water. So click through, hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a video. But if you wouldn't mind, do that at the end of this video because I got 4 more freaky things found on the fishing lines coming up for you right now. Coming in at the number 4 spot is this terrifying 16-foot long monstrosity hauled out of the ocean by Chilean fishermen, shocking those who learned suddenly that fish can be 5 meters long sometimes. A clip of the Oarfish was posted to TikTok where it went viral almost immediately. Little fishy fever sweeping up 10 million views. Most people worried this fish might be a bringer of bad times, and there might be an inkling of truth to that. The fish is called an oarfish, and it's thought to be an omen of impending bad fortune, which I understand completely. If I was having a nice day on the water and I pulled this thing out, I would not think that I had been blessed. I would not think that good things were about to happen to me. In Japanese folklore, this fish is sometimes referred to as Ryogo no Tsukai, translating the messenger from the sea god's palace. Linked to the legend of Namazu, a giant sea snake which caused earthquakes whenever it would rise. Now, oarfish live deep in the depths of the sea, really way down there. And there's a theory that they only rise nearer to the surface level whenever there's a disturbance of the tectonic plates. That's the big crust that makes all the earthquakes happen, which would definitely make this fish a bad omen and a bringer of earthquakes, and you understand where the folklore behind it would come from. But here's something for you. The actual oarfish, terrifying as it looks, is a gentle giant. It's the largest bony fish in the whole world, and it isn't much of a predator, so don't worry about it. It looks like it could swoop you up whole. It's not going to. It prefers to swim around hoovering up plankton. They barely even have teeth, actually. And they don't pose a threat to humans at all, unless you consider scaring the heck out of you a threat. And I hope not, otherwise I'd be threatening you guys every single day. Twice a day. Number 3, basket star. Now, whenever I do these videos about the ocean and all manner of strange monstrosities that live beneath the trenches, I feel like I discover all these new species, and more often than not, the species I discover are ones that I probably would have been fine not knowing existed on this earth with me. When I find out for even 50 seconds that these things live on Earth, puts the fear of God into me. Makes me understand that I could die. Look, I like ocean creatures fine enough, but whenever we do these videos, I just think about how they feel, and I can't imagine our next creature would feel pleasant. This horrible little bundle of spaghetti is called a basket star. It's a very ugly looking fish. I'm sorry, basket star. I mean not to pass judgment, it's just that you're ugly. Maybe a basket star came up on your TikTok timeline recently when an angler from Singapore caught the strange creature and posted a video of it, gaining viral traction as we all came to gawk at the weird tentacled creature. The angler, one Ramlin Same, caught the basket star on one of his usual fishing spots off Pulau Ubin. The creature was writhing and wriggling with what looked like more than 100 wiggly little appendages. Ugh, it looks like all the stuff that collects at the bottom of the sink, you know? Looks like if you put your finger in that, you'd never get it back. I just don't like looking at it. At the time, he thought at first that it was just a bit of seaweed being pushed around by the waves, and when he pulled it up, he thought that possibly the creature was an alien, which I totally get. If I pulled this thing out of the water, I would be calling the FBI. Now, while that would have been pretty cool, it's just this freaky little critter. Now, because they're deep sea creatures, it's rare that humans get to see basket stars up close or study them, which is what made Ramlin's catch all that much more interesting. We actually don't know a ton about these bizarre little creatures. But the other thing that made it so interesting is just because, come on, look at how weird this little pile of noodles is. That exists. That exists on the same planet as you. Number 2, a giant prehistoric skull. Generally, when you're going fishing, the goal is to catch a fish, maybe even 2 fish if you're getting wild. So imagine the surprise when you find a prehistoric skull on the end of your line. Raymond McElroy, no relation to the podcast Empire, and his assistant Charlie Coyle were shocked to discover a massive heaving elk skull with a gigantic pair of antlers on the other end of their hook. According to scientists who carbon dated it, the skull dates back nearly 11,000 years. Now, shockingly, the water they were fishing in was only about 20 feet deep when they discovered the elk skull. You'd think someone would have tripped over it in 11,000 years or dug it out by now, but hey, fate works in very mysterious ways that I don't claim to understand or try to. I can try to imagine pulling a giant skull out of the water though. Charlie Coyle was shocked by it, saying, "I thought it was the devil himself. I was gonna throw it back in. I didn't know what to do with it." At the very least, hanging it up as living room decor, man, above the fireplace, above the mantle. It would go great. Now, the skulls and the antlers of the giant elk once belonged to an extinct ancient species known as the Megaloceros giganteus, and I know I'm gonna end up making a bunch of videos about the Megaloceros the way I did the Megalodon and the Titanoboa. It's entirely possible. This species has been extinct for nearly 11,000 years and was one of the largest species of deer to ever trot around the world. How it ended up in a lake in Ireland to get caught by a pair of fishermen, kind of above my pay grade, But hey, I don't solve the mysteries here. I just ask them and speculate blindly. And number 1, a ghost shark. Oh. Roman Fedortsov routinely entertains his 600,000 Instagram followers with pictures of all the bizarre monstrosities he pulls out of the sea while sailing around Murmansk. That's a port city in Russia. His Instagram is a treasure trove of scary undersea finds. It's one of my favorite things on my feed, and I absolutely recommend you give him a follow on any of his social media platforms if you're into this sort of thing, as he is the head honcho for it. This video could easily have just been 5 things he posted on his account. Like I said, this guy is the king of weird stuff in the water. Right here is a fish of many names, sometimes called Frankenstein's fish, due to the stitches all over its body looking like it's like sewn together from all these different fish. It's also been referred to as a ratfish, a ghost shark, a spookfish, but officially they're known as ghost chimeras. These things are bad news from teeth to tail. They got a spicy They do not have a spicy dorsal fin. They might taste amazing, but I doubt it. I mean, look at the fucking thing. They have a spiny dorsal fin that's poisonous to the touch. It's got a mouth of rat-like teeth that helps it grind down anything it catches, crushing its prey in its jaws. Now, it usually goes after delicious things like crabs and prawn, so the rat teeth help pulverize tough shells. You're not really supposed to eat the shells, but it's a fish. Nobody told it that. It also makes for a very handy nutcracker. Now, these little predators also have an inherent ability to detect the electric fields produced by other creatures. I'm just reading fun facts off a Wikipedia page. I wish I even knew the littlest bit about biology, because that makes this fish sound magic. I didn't know fish had like electricity. I should have paid attention in school. Too late. Now I'm here. Now I'm reading YouTube. I could have had a different career. Now, I think as a little treat while I reassess my life and my career path, we ought to have a slideshow of just a bunch of Fedortsov's weirdest catches. We'll do a little lightning round of some freaky sea critters, and I'll react to them. We'll have fun. It's gonna be a great way to end the video. We're all gonna laugh. All right, here we go. Ready? Baby, that's a face not even Mother Nature could love. I don't mind this one. I wouldn't touch it, but I like it. I like it, the cut of its jib. I'd play cards with this one. Buddy, toss that one back in the water. I don't ever want to see that again. Don't ever put that up on my screen again. I don't ever want to see that.
Number 5, wolverine fish. Hugh Jackman, if you're watching this and you like scary stuff, this first one's for you, my dude. In 2021, there were more than 200 new species of just freshwater fish discovered alone. Just freshwater. Hopefully ancistrus wolverine. Okay, that's a pretty badass name. And a badass looking fish. There's no way in hell I'm taking that thing off of a hook with my hands. Are you kidding me? And you wouldn't want to either, because these fishes have strong lateral curved spikes called endontus tucked underneath their gills, which at any time they can extend and jab at their prey with these spiky prong-like claws, hence the name. For those of you who don't know Wolverine, he's an X-Men with claws. It kind of goes hand in hand here, you know? The wolverine fish is actually a catfish, however, that grows up to only about 6 or 7 inches long. They get their name from both the barbed razor-sharp prongs associated with them and the temper and aggression inside of them. Yeah, so like full-blown Wolverine-style anger. Luckily for us, they live in between rocks found so far in the Brazilian river of Rio Xingu in the lower Amazon that I don't think you're gonna swim into any one of these soon. I feel like that's where the scariest fish are, the Amazon. Also, kind of confusing biologists, so many species and names alike but not alike. Catfish, wolf fish, half wolf, half man, X-Men fish. Like every day there's a new fish. Wolverine fish are only herbivores and graze on algae and detritus tucked away deep under rocks, so the likelihood of you just like stepping on one of these are pretty low. Might scare you away from their home, but they won't eat you. Just don't go flipping over any rocks and reaching underneath murky water in the Amazon. That's all I can say for this one. Number 4, alien fish? Well, one magnificent alien fish, Advena magnifica, which translates to magnificent alien, hence the name. No, it's not from outer space or anything, don't panic. Technically, it's not even a fish. This sea sponge literally gets its name because it just looks like E.T. Hey, I didn't name it, they did. To be fair, it does look like E.T. the alien, come on. The long neck, the huge head, the big eyes, it's literally perfect. This year, a new sea sponge was discovered officially. Well, plucked back in 2017, but they're sure now that it's a completely new species. Over 6,000 feet deep in the Pacific Ocean, research team from the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History came upon a mesmerizing seascape. Dr. Chris Ma of the team dubbed the scene, quote, a forest of the weird. The sea sponge rises up from the seafloor to look exactly onto the direction of the current, mouth open, hoping to swallow up some bacteria to eat. That's sick. Just an alien sponge sticking their ET heads out, catching the breeze, hoping for some fast food. Doesn't sound like a bad gig. The two holes of the sponge that give it its signature ET eyes appearance are clearly visible on the outside of its head. These holes, technically oscules, serve as openings of which the sponge pumps water out of. The sponge is covered in even tinier pores where the water is drawn into the sponge along with tasty bacteria and other small prey. Just sucked in through small chambers and the water's pumped out through a bunch of canals. Cristiana Castello Branco, the researcher who found this deep-sea gray, explains the importance of this discovery by saying, quote, as all of these organisms are intricately connected, by documenting and describing marine biodiversity, we are building a better understanding of life and the impact of humans on Earth. Yeah, 100% we're all connected. Let's give these little dudes some clean water. How about that, people, all right? No more Mountain Dew bottles just thrown into the lake. Pick it up. Number 3, bulldog fish. Catfish, wolverine fish, now bulldog fish. When are we just gonna have a fish, you know? The bulldog fish, or the Xenactinus oryx. That sounds like a Decepticon, doesn't it? Xenactinus oryx? Roll out. Well, it's Autobots. Never mind. This thing can truly teach a new dog some old tricks. Like 90 million years old tricks, because our newest discovery is actually a really, really old one. Extinct, thankfully. You wouldn't want to haul this thing up in your net. The Dino of the Week blog states that some of the longest bulldog fish ever may have once even measured up to 6 meters long. Yeah, that's like a regular sized shark. The bulldog fish fossils may be quite valuable as well. A fully intact, complete framed specimen sold for about $110,000 at Sotheby's auction house. Is this the reason fish and chips are so expensive nowadays? Like, what's going on here? This scary dude roamed the warm, shallow waters of the Western Interior Seaway that split America in two halves during the Upper Cretaceous period. Distinguished by their heavy, bony skull and armed to the tooth with teeth like a nightmare, last year, Andy Moore, a local fisherman, made a discovery while taking part in a fishing competition in Nebraska. When he brought his kayak over to free his line, he first thought that it was a skeleton of something that had recently died, so he just returned back to his tournament. He contacted the sheriff's department after the tournament, worried, and they got back to him saying it was his lucky day. Dude, imagine just reeling in a 90 million year old fish during a fishing tournament. Like, I hope he won. That's definitely first place, isn't it? Oh, Andy? Oh yeah, caught a 90 millioner, yeah. Number 2, the barrel eye fish. Tubular eyes, bro. No, seriously, your tubular eyes actually are very rare and also significantly puzzling. Say hello to the barrel eye fish, or the Macropina microstoma from the Opisthoproctus species, meaning backwards in Greek, to signify their uniquely designed flipped up eyes luminously inside, alive in their head, or backwards. Generally directed upwards and back to detect the silhouettes of both predator and prey, although they can move their eyes back to forward. Basically, they have a sunroof above their head that they can look up from inside their own head. Hey, that's pretty tubular, bruh. They can be found deep in tropical waters in the twilight zone, between 600 and 800 meters down. There are fish that gaze upwards through their transparent heads with eyes like mesmerizing emerald orbs. These domes are huge spherical lenses that sit on a pair of long silvery eye tubes, hence its common name. The barrel eye fish has a green tint over their eyes, which even acts as kind of like a sunglasses to help them track down prey in any sort of lighting. There is literally nowhere to hide, even for a bioluminescent fish. Barrel eyes are one step ahead the entire time. After years of only seeing dead, net-caught specimens, in 2021, Bruce Robinson with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute in California and their high-def cameras finally got a pretty good look at these dudes using remotely operated vehicles. Dude, these are apparently really rare. Side note, is this how fish are evolving? Like their heads are becoming see-through all of a sudden? Because this is terrifying. Like, imagine a shark with a sunroof. Number 1, the snapping shrimp. This little guy, the snapping shrimp, aka the pistol shrimp, aka muscle in the Alphidae family. Sounds like a mafia family, doesn't it? Hey, I'm a pistol shrimp with the Alphidae family, who's asking? This little thing can literally create a sonic boom under the water right before and as it's attacking you. That's not scary at all. It's so fast you literally don't even know what's happening due to the stun alone and how fast it is. You won't see it coming, you might hear it coming. This thing's sound is that big, it creates a sonic boom. We know nothing, Jon Snow. Like, they're apparently found in coral reefs and oyster reefs. These pistol shrimp hit their prey at over 100 kilometers per hour. In doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because of this, Mike Tyson shrimp is so quick with the jab, the following pop is around 200 decibels. It has a punching hand and a claw hand, like a jab and a cross. The sound stuns their prey first and resembles sticks breaking or cracking of a knuckle under the water. But don't panic, not in any lakes or freshwater, they live in tropical seas. They're usually muddy green or orange in color, usually only about that big. Scientists found that actual light is produced when the bubble pops due to the high temperature and pressure under the water. They're the only ones so far that can do this. I mean, this is pretty sick. And also pretty terrifying. The knowledge that fish are starting to learn how to flashbang other fish like they're clearing a room in Call of Duty, dude, that's where I draw the line. I'm not going swimming anymore at all.
In 5th place, we have the Mary Celeste. Probably the most famous mystery ship on our list today is the Mary Celeste, a merchant brigantine that was found drifting in December of 1872 off the Azores with her crew of 10 nowhere to be found. The Canadian brigantine Di Grazia found her in a disheveled but seaworthy condition under partial sail and with her lifeboat missing. Now the ship was, missing a lifeboat. There were signs that something had gone wrong, and to be specific, one of its pumps was dismantled, but the ship was still seaworthy, and there was no hint as to why the crew and passengers had abandoned it. The last entry in her log was dated 10 days earlier. She had left New York City for Genoa on November 7th, and, still had plenty of provisions when she was found. Her cargo of alcohol was intact, and the captain's and crew's personal belongings were undisturbed. None of those who had been on board were ever seen or heard from ever again. Among the missing was the captain, his wife, and their very young daughter. On December 23rd of 1872, during a court hearing to try and establish just what happened, Frederick Solly Flood, who was the Attorney General of Gibraltar, ordered an examination of the Mary Celeste, which was carried out by John Austin, surveyor of shipping, with the assistance of a diver, Ricardo Puntonato. Austin noted cuts on each side of the bow caused by a sharp instrument and found possible traces of scarlet fluid on the captain's sword. His report emphasized that the ship did not appear to have been struck by heavy weather, citing a vial of sewing machine oil found upright in its place. Now, Austin did not acknowledge that the vial might have been replaced since the abandonment, nor did the court raise this point. Fortunato's report on the hull concluded that the ship had not been involved in a collision or run aground. A further inspection by a group of Royal Navy captains endorsed Austin's opinion that the cuts on the bow had been caused deliberately. They also discovered stains on one of the ship's rails that might have been bodily liquids, together with a deep mark possibly caused by an axe. Now, these findings strengthened Flood's suspicions that human wrongdoing, rather than natural disaster, lay behind the mystery. On January 22nd of 1873, he sent the reports to the Board of Trade in London, adding his own conclusion that the crew had got at the alcohol on board and killed the Briggs family and the ship's officers in a drunken frenzy. They had cut the bows to simulate a collision, then fled in the yawl to suffer an unknown fate. Flood thought that Morehouse and his men were hiding something, specifically that Mary Celeste had been abandoned in a more easterly location, and that the log had been doctored. He just couldn't accept that the Mary Celeste could have traveled so far while uncrewed. Now, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, helped make the ship famous with a short story vaguely based on the event, in which foul play explained the enigma. A 2007 theory, reported by the Smithsonian, suggests that perhaps the captain made the call to abandon ship in sight of land after the ship's pumps became fouled. Now, normally it would be unusual for a captain to abandon a seaworthy vessel, but the captain may not have been able to tell how much water the ship was taking on with the pumps broken. The ship was also slightly off course and had been battling bad weather, which may have prompted the captain to take the chance at land when he could. To this day, the crew of the mysterious vessel was never found. And despite many theories, no one can say with surety why the ship was abandoned in the first place. So the Mary Celeste sailed for 12 years after it was abandoned and finally struck the Rochelles Reef off of the coast of Haiti and became stuck there. And the ship is still there today, and the shipwreck was discovered in 2001. In 4th place, we have the Patriot. Aaron Burr, the 3rd Vice President of the United States, is most famous for killing former Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Yeah, make all the Hamilton jokes in the comments. I will admit, I had the "pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir?" pop into my head when I was first reading about this particular wreck. But I'm not here to talk about the plot of the musical, but instead, the daughter. So Theodosia disappeared at sea at the age of 29, along with the rest of the passengers and crew on a schooner called the Patriot. The Patriot was traveling from Charleston, North Carolina to New York City in December of 1812 with Theodosia Burr aboard on a journey to visit her father. The last sighting of the ship was on January 2nd of 1813, when a storm blew in and the ship was never heard from again. Aaron believed for the rest of his life that the ship sank and that his daughter was dead, but wild rumors flew about the ship's fate. Some said that the ship had not gone down in bad weather, but had been captured by pirates, and the crew and passengers were taken prisoner or, killed. For years there were rumors that Theodosia had survived or washed ashore dead, or that her killers had confessed. Perhaps one of the spookiest occurrences was the 1869 discovery of a painting of a well-heeled young woman in the home of a North Carolina woman whose family looted ships for a living. It had been found aboard on an abandoned vessel that had drifted ashore at Nag's Head on the Outer Banks, that's what she told the doctor who treated her. Theodosia Burr was said to have been bringing a very similar portrait to New York as a gift for her father. So let me know y'all's theories in the comments. In third place, we have the MV Salem Express. The story of this French passenger ferry is sometimes referred to as the most tragic shipwreck in the Red Sea. In December of 1991, the ship was about an hour away from the Safaga port when it crashed into a reef on the Egyptian coast. The ferry started sinking within a matter of minutes, taking the lives of approximately 500 people. The disaster actually sparked controversy over the number of lost lives, with officials reporting that there were 690 people on board and only 180 were saved. Today, the Salem Express is a popular diving destination because of its surprisingly well-preserved state. Divers can still see the remains of luggage, including toys, clothes, and automobiles. Some have also reported hearing the sounds of children laughing and car engines revving. Sure, because, diving isn't scary enough with all the health risks. Gotta add some malevolent ghosties along with it. In second place, we have the Andrea Doria. So the Andrea Doria was an Italian ocean liner that currently sits off of the coast of Massachusetts. Before it collided with the Stockholm, which tore into the Andrea Doria's hull, causing it to slowly tilt on its side before sinking, 11 hours later. The ocean liner was considered virtually unsinkable. See, I'm making a face because if I had a nickel for every time a ship that was called unsinkable sunk, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Also, I'm just not big on tempting fate. The ship had been outfitted with the latest navigational equipment, including 2 sets of radar, and was designed with 11 watertight compartments. Now, the compartments were constructed so that the boat would remain afloat if any 2 were breached, and so that, she would never take on a list of more than 15 degrees. As an extra safety precaution, her lifeboats could still be launched if the list reached 20 degrees. Fun fact about the Andrea Doria was that it was the first liner to possess 3 outdoor swimming pools, 1 each for first, cabin, and tourist class. Now, the wreck only took 46 lives when it happened, but 16 people have since died exploring the wreck. What's left is in a remote spot at the edge of the continental shelf in about 240 feet of water, and most personal effects like money are still aboard. This makes the wreck very attractive for divers, but the ship's twisting passageways have become a fatal maze for some, while others have succumbed to failed equipment or decompression sickness, which happens when divers ascend too quickly and dissolved gases bubble out of the, red fluid under the reduced pressure. And that's why, while I love the idea of learning how to scuba dive one day, you'll never find me actually doing it. A little too risky for my liking. Despite having less name recognition than the Titanic, the Italian wreck is now considered by many to be the Mount Everest of underwater exploration. Some folks simply kneel on the historic hull, while others rummage through the wreck in search of mementos, such as, china from the well-appointed cruise liner to take home and frame. And hey, every once in a while, someone gets lucky. In 2010, 2 divers from New Jersey unearthed the 75-pound bell that once adorned the Doria's deck. Apparently, it only takes, 4 minutes to reach the wreck from the surface. Once divers reach the wreck, though, things can get much more complicated. The more time divers spend breathing the specially tailored mix of gases required to survive at such depths, the longer they'll have to spend making their way painstakingly back to the surface. A typical Doria dive includes only 15 or 16 minutes exploring the wreck before divers must leave. And during those few minutes, divers affix strobe lights to the mooring line to help find their way back. Some hook lines of their own, wound into reels on their equipment, onto the wreck near the mooring line so they can find their way back when their time in the wreck runs out. Some of those who have died got tangled or lost in the wreck. Others have panicked, spit out their mouthpieces, and drowned. No big. A big part of the danger is the depth and the risk of nitrogen narcosis, which once again is a condition that can occur below 100 feet, in which too much nitrogen builds up in that red little fluid, causing a level of impaired thinking that is often compared to alcohol intoxication. In first place, we have the Hunley. The Civil War submarine, the H.L. Hunley, is a ship that managed to sink not once, not twice, but 3 times. Look, I'm all for recycling, but with that kind of track record, someone should have clued in after, the second time. When the precious kitty known as Unsinkable Sam survived more than 2 wrecks, someone eventually decided to keep him on land and avoid, cursing further ships. Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. Just saying. First demonstrated in 1863, the ship is famous as one of the initial forays into developing combat submarines. She carried Confederate Navy men to Charleston Harbor, attempting to break a Union blockade that was limiting the city. On the very first mission, the Hunley sank at the dock when either the wake of a ship swamped it or tangled lines dragged it underwater, and caused the passing of, 5 men on board. The sub was recovered and launched again a few months later. Some idiot on board left a valve open and it sank, killing the entire 8-man crew. The back-to-back disasters did not dissuade the Confederate Navy though. Sure, I guess we can chalk the second incident up to human error, but the vibes I'm getting are off. The ship was found, modified, and put back in service for a February 1864 mission in which it sunk the USS Housatonic, killing 5. And, it would turn out to be a deadly mission for the Hunley's crew. The sub and all aboard were never heard from again until 1995, when a team of wreck hunters rediscovered it, with all 8 crew members inside. And in 2000, the wreck was raised. To this day, no one knows what doomed the Hunley's final mission. She may have been crippled by her own torpedo, or trapped by ill-favored tides, leaving the crew to die of asphyxia when their air ran out. They may have been clipped by a Union rescue ship that never even noticed the collision, or perhaps someone managed a lucky shot that disabled the sub's captain and sent water pouring into the vessel. I guess we'll never know.
Coming in at 5, the RMS Lusitania. The RMS Lusitania was a British ocean liner that was sunk on May 7, 1915 by a German U-boat 11 miles off the southern coast of Ireland. The sinking of the Lusitania presaged the United States declaration of war on Germany just 2 years later. This ocean liner currently resides 300 feet below the surface off the coast of County Cork, and during the day was the largest ship to set sail, carrying 1,960 people when it set off for what was known to be her last voyage. After being torpedoed by the German U-boat, it took just 20 minutes for the Lusitania to sink and killing 1,197 people aboard. Now to this day there is controversy surrounding the boat, as the boat was carrying civilians from nations not embroiled in World War I, specifically Americans, and the attack in turn helped change the US opinion against Germany, according to the Lusitania resource that is. Many historians believe that former British naval intelligence deliberately placed the boat in danger in order to drag the US into the war alongside the Brits. However, not only that, but the ship was also carrying munitions for the war effort, a detail which the British government refused to confirm until 2014, a detail which may explain the source of the mysterious explosion some survivors reported hearing after the initial torpedo strike. Now, interesting still, the wreckage of the Lusitania was bombed by the Royal Navy during World War II, and in the 1990s a Dublin diver visited the wreck, with him describing it like Swiss cheese, and that the seabed around the boat was littered with unexploded hedgehog mines. This is definitely not a place you'd want to visit. Coming in at 4, SS Andrea Doria. SS Andrea Doria was an ocean liner for the Italian line, which is most famous for sinking in 1956 when 46 people died. On July 25th of 1956, while Andrea Doria was approaching the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts, bound for New York City, the eastbound MS Stockholm of the Swedish-American line collided with it during thick fog, in one of history's most infamous maritime disasters. The boat was top-heavy, which resulted in the Andrea Doria tilting and in turn leaving half of its lifeboats unusable. The shortage of lifeboats would of course result in significant loss of life, but thankfully the boat stayed afloat for another 11 hours following the collision. Due to this fact, 1,660 passengers and crew were rescued. However, 46 people on the ship died as a direct consequence of the collision. Now, what makes this shipwreck so interesting is that due to the luxurious appointments and initially good condition of the wreck, Andrea Doria has been a frequent target of treasure divers and is commonly referred to as the Mount Everest of scuba diving. The ship is called this simply because of the number of deaths while exploring the site. To list a few, William Edgerton in 1956, who passed away shortly after one of the valves on the breathing apparatus became partially closed. Christopher Murley and Charles J. McGurr in 1999, who both died of apparent heart attacks while preparing for the dive. William Schmolt in 2002, who died from decompression sickness, Terry DeWolf in 2008 who died during a dive on the wreck, his cause of death was never determined, and finally Stephen Slater in 2017 who was pulled from the water unconscious and could not be revived. Ultimately, this wreck holds a lot of supernatural questions that cannot be answered, and therefore you should stay as far away from it as possible. Coming in at 3, the Mary Rose. The Mary Rose is a carrack-type warship of the English Tudor Navy of King Henry VIII. She served for 33 years and ultimately saw her last action on July 19, 1545, when she sank off the Isle of Wight. Not long after Henry ascended the throne, the Mary Rose would participate in several skirmishes against the French early in her career. However, she was kept in storage when the fighting died down. In 1545, however, the Mary Rose was taken out of retirement when the French attempted an invasion of England at Portsmouth. But during the bombardment she went down, taking more than 300 crewmen to their deaths. What's baffling though is that no one quite knew why the Mary Rose sank. According to the museum dedicated to the warship, a retrofit may have left her too heavy to withstand an unlucky wind that caught her as she was turning. She may have been overloaded, or perhaps a French cannonball hit her hull, swamping her. The boat was raised from the seabed in 1982, however this still didn't answer the questions as to what exactly happened to the Mary Rose. Coming in at 2, the USS Cyclops. The USS Cyclops was the second of 4 Proteus-class colliers built for the United States Navy several years before World War I. The ship was named for the Cyclops, a primordial race of giants from Greek mythology. She was the second US naval vessel to bear the name. Now, what was ultimately disturbing about the boat was its loss of 306 crew and passengers without a trace within the area known as the Bermuda Triangle sometime after March 4th, 1918, making this the single largest loss of life in US naval history, not directly involving combat. Now, this took place during wartime, making people believe that she was captured or sunk by a German raider or submarine. Now, according to the Naval Historical Foundation, the ship was carrying manganese ore from Brazil to Baltimore when she took a detour to Barbados. The rumors have it that she was overloaded by both her cargo and coal she picked up on that stop. Not only that, but one of her engines was non-functional thanks to a cracked cylinder. All in all, these factors may have contributed to the ship's ultimate demise, however no one quite knows for sure. The ship's loss was what ultimately fueled the fear of the Bermuda Triangle, a region of the Atlantic that is said to be the site of many mysterious maritime disappearances. So if you want to visit the USS Cyclops, you would have to visit the Bermuda Triangle. And would you dare do that? You shouldn't, because you'd die. And finally, number 1, the HMS Terror. The HMS Terror was a specialized warship and a newly developed bomb vessel constructed by the Royal Navy all the way back in 1813. However, she was later converted into a polar exploration ship 2 decades later and participated in George Back's Arctic expedition of 1836 to 1837, the Ross expedition of 1839 to 1843, and Sir John Franklin's ill-fated attempt to force a Northwest Passage in 1845, during which was lost with all hands along with the HMS Erebus. However, on September 12, 2016, HMS Terror was located in Nunavut's Terror Bay off the southwest coast of King William Island. The wreck was found 57 miles south of the location where the ship was reported abandoned, and 31 miles from the wreck of the HMS Erebus, which was discovered in 2014. For more than 170 years, the Terror was a mystery which loomed large over the Arctic prior to its discovery. Now, the initial expedition launched in 1845. However, it was in 1846 that the Terror and Erebus became stuck in the ice. Franklin died in 1847, according to a note later discovered stashed on King William Island, and the ships were ultimately abandoned in April 1848. The 106 men were never heard from again, nor was the Terror, until 2016 as previously mentioned. As it stands, researchers are hoping to unravel more about the mystery of where the expedition ultimately went wrong and what exactly happened to the crew. For those who like a spook and a conspiracy theory, AMC made a show called The Terror, which follows the ill-fated expedition. However, there's a twist. It is emotional but absolutely terrifying, and is perhaps one of the best shows I've watched in a long time. Give it a watch, you won't be disappointed. Coming in at number 5 we have the narwhal tusk. If any of you have ever seen the movie Elf, then you're familiar with the cute narwhal in the beginning of the movie, and that movie really brought narwhals to the public's attention and making this sea creature more popular than ever before, but so much about this creature is a mystery. In 1577 the English explorer Martin Frobisher led an expedition of 150 men to the northern Canada in search of gold, but they had come across something they had never intended, and that was the sea unicorn. The myth of the unicorn goes back centuries, and the business of unicorn horn trade was sustained through the Middle Ages and Renaissance by Vikings who killed the so-called sea unicorns, cut off their horns and sold them for an astronomical price. As European naturalists became more familiar with the world's animal, the myth of the unicorn faded, but mystery of the sea unicorn continued. Frobisher's discovery was actually what we know today as the narwhal, but the horn itself continues to be speculated by many. But the horn is apparently not a horn at all, but is a tooth. The relatives of narwhals include species like the beluga whales, orcas and dolphins, but the mystery remains of how did this massive freakish tooth evolve in this one specific species after its ancestors branched off from whales with ordinary teeth. Many scientists and researchers debate about what this tooth is used for, and some suggest it's an acoustic probe, a rudder, an ice picker, or a spear for battling predators. These creatures don't make it easy for researchers to see them use their tusk for anything at all, so it makes many people continue to question it. Many have come up with many different theories about this so-called horn and what they use it for and why they have it. It has created a huge debate between researchers and scientists to this day, but no definite answer has come out to this day. In at number 4 we have the submarine disappearances in 1968. This is one giant mysterious situation, which is the disappearance of 4 submarines from 4 different countries in 1968. The USS Scorpion, a Soviet submarine K-129, a French submarine Minerve, and the INS Dakar went inexplicably missing over just a 5-month period, and the last 2 disappearing only 4 days apart. The exact causes of these sinkings remain unknown and remain a mystery over 50 years later. The INS Dakar was scheduled to arrive in Israel on January 29, 1968. When it didn't return, searchers went out to find it, but after a while there was no sign of the missing submarine. So the search ended on February 4th, and the 69-man crew was officially declared dead in 1981. The cause of the sinking was never determined, and theories say that either a mechanical or human error caused a catastrophic accident, or that the submarine snorkel was damaged after hitting another ship, causing it to flood. The Minerve was on the training operation in the Mediterranean on January 27, 1968, and when they were on their way home, the men were caught in a bad storm. When it was 30 miles away from the port, the Minerve made contact with the men on land and said it would port in about an hour, but an hour came and went, and the submarine had never returned. A frantic search was conducted with 20 vessels and aircrafts trying to locate the Minerve, but it was eventually called off on February 2nd when they found nothing. The K-129 with a crew of 98 descended on March 8, 1968, and almost 2 weeks into patrol on the North Pacific, the K-129 failed to send a scheduled radio message. The Soviets soon began a frantic search, and after 2 months of no sign of the submarine, they gave up their search. The cause of the ship sinking remains unknown and will likely never be known. Almost 3 months after the K-129, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered attack submarine with a crew of 99 men, went missing in the Atlantic while on its way back from a patrol in the Mediterranean. It was sent out on February 15, 1968, and toward the end of its patrol, it radioed that it was expected to return on May 27th. But as you can guess, the USS Scorpion would never return. Like the others, many searched for the lost ship, but on June 5th, the Scorpion and its crew were declared presumed lost. Over the years, there have been multiple searches for these submarines, but only parts have been recovered, and it's considered one of the biggest mysteries that happened in the sea. No one knows why so many went missing in such a short amount of time, how exactly they went missing for so long, and what exactly made these vessels disappear, and this is a mystery we may never get the answer to. Coming in at number 3 we have the Bermuda Triangle. Named for the triangular shape of around 500,000 square miles of ocean between Miami, Bermuda and Puerto Rico, for centuries the Bermuda Triangle has been mystified as a harrowing patch of ocean where sailors and pilots are prone to lose contact with the natural world and disappear forever. Back when Christopher Columbus first sailed the area, he claimed to see a giant ball of light in the sky that crashed into the horizon and made it glow. Soon after, all sorts of strange events happened in the area, including several boats mysteriously disappearing, and in one incident in 1945, an entire squadron of US torpedo bombers vanished into thin air due to all these weird instances, giving this place the name the Devil's Triangle. The exact number of ships ships and airplanes that have disappeared is not known, but it's estimated that around 50 ships and 20 planes have been victim to the Bermuda Triangle, and many of these mysterious disappearances of these ships and planes have never been recovered. Many see the Bermuda Triangle as a real phenomenon and have multiple theories to try and explain this mysterious place, and some of these theories are human error, paranormal explanations, violent weather like hurricanes, the Gulf Stream, which is a major surface current within the ocean, methane hydrates, which is a form of natural gas that causes bubbles to form around the ship and ultimately sink it without warning. All of these are only theories, and the Bermuda Triangle to this day is the most notorious sea legend of all time. In at number 2 we have the Gulf of Mexico's cursed shipwreck. An estimated 4,000 shipwrecks litter the seabed across the stretch of water, and the Gulf of Mexico is one of the wealthiest locations for maritime archaeology in the world. In February 2001, oil workers for ExxonMobil were laying some pipeline when they happened to stumble upon a shipwreck about 2,600 feet deep. After discovering the wreckage, a team was assembled to explore this mysterious ship, but nothing seemed to go right. The exploration submarine malfunctioned right as it was getting ready to go down to check out the wreck, and that was only the beginning of these mysterious malfunctions. Others include video monitors going out whenever they fired their thrusters, sonars breaking, and hydraulics going haywire with no explanation for any of these problems. After nothing working and things continuing to break, the Navy sent a researcher submarine down to investigate the wreckage, and on the way down it suddenly self-destructed, and somehow when it finally did get to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything. 6 months later, in July in 2002, a team working aboard the NR-1 decided to launch a robotic sub down to the wreck site, but the malfunctions continued. The second the rover entered the water, it veered to the right and went out of control. The tether had caught in the propellers, which caused the vessel to smash into the underside of the ship, and the rover was never recovered. Later in the summer of 2002, the curse would continue as a ship from Sustainable Sea Program of the NOAA offered to pick up artifacts from the site. The first time the vessel attempted to leave the dock, debris was lodged in the propeller. The second time, the propeller locked and the ship ended up in dry lock, needing repairs. Over the years, many others have tried to learn more about this wreck, but little was found, and what was found wasn't at all helpful. To this day, nothing has been able to get too close to the shipwreck to investigate and explore the phenomenon, and very little is known about this mysterious ship. Many believe the lives lost in the wreck continue to haunt the ship and will keep anyone and everything out of it at all costs. And finally, in at number 1 we have the unmapped ocean floor. This is truly one of the biggest mysteries, and humans' curiosity about the Earth's floor is centuries old. Much remains to be learned about the ocean, especially exploring the mystery of the deep sea. From mapping and describing the physical, biological, geological, chemical and archaeological aspects of the ocean and understanding their dynamics. For centuries, scholars believed the deep sea to be a lifeless place. Until the late 19th century, we've discovered there is a diversity of life and creatures living down there. Many researchers and divers had tried to dive and take submarines down to explore more of this unknown place, but it's very hard due to the extremely cold temperatures, the darkness, and the literally bone-shattering pressure that's more than 1,000 times that at sea level. In 2019, a retired naval officer, Victor Vescovo, set a new record as one of the deepest dives to date, reaching almost 36,000 feet down in a submarine into the deepest place on Earth, the Marianas Trench. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, driving weather, regulating temperature, and ultimately supporting all life's organisms. Throughout history, the ocean has been a vital source of sustenance, transport, commerce, growth, and inspiration. But to this day, more than 80% of the ocean remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored, and it's still unknown how deep the ocean really is. Given the high degree of difficulty and cost in exploring our ocean using underwater vehicles, researchers have relied heavily on technologies such as sonar to generate maps of the seafloor, but currently less than 10% of the global ocean is mapped using modern sonar technology, and only about 35% of the United States have been mapped using modern methods. As we go deeper into the ocean floor, it's too deep for this modern technology because it's too remote and dark for this type of visual mapping. So if you go swimming in the ocean, it's very unknown of what is swimming and living below you. But scientists and researchers continue to develop technologies to unlock the many secrets of the ocean. The NOAA is working to increase our understanding of the ocean realm.
Starting us off at number 5, we have Yellow Jack. We're gonna set sail on a weird one to start us off. If you're a flag enthusiast, you might see the ending of this one coming from a mile away, but we'll get there in a minute. So the legend of Yellow Jack starts upon a spice and gold filled ship preparing to leave the Indies and head back home. The crew was accounted for, the cargo was secure, the captain was feeling Mwah, nice. Then, at the last second, a mysterious figure asked if they had room for one more. Feeling pretty good about their haul, they welcomed this extra pair of helping hands on board. Wrong move. Turns out this was a disreputable lad known as Yellow Jack, with a reputation so abhorrent that the ship was forbidden to enter any port she called upon. For ages, the crew sailed from port to port, hoping that someone would let them dock, but it never happened. They were forced to endlessly cruise the seas, running lower and lower on supplies. Patience, too. Eventually, the crew went mad and committed mutiny before they all murdered each other. Some say the ship is still sailing, the ghosts of these sea-locked sailors manning the helm. Someday they may find a port that will take them and they will finally be able to rest. In the meantime, they will sail the seas, infecting other ships with the same madness that Yellow Jack caused. Now this is a spooky, ghostly story in its own right, but it could also be a reference to a different ship killer at the time. Disease. The Yellow Jack is a flag flown by ships infected with plague, cholera, and other nasty, fast-spreading diseases, so Yellow Jack itself could be a metaphor for disease, and ports weren't letting them in because of quarantine procedures. Absolutely fascinating, and it would also make a killer movie. A pirate quarantine body horror. Think The Thing meets Wreck meets Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh damn. Coming in at number 4, we have the Caleuche, a Chilean ship sailing around an island known for its terrible storms. Shining white sides, 3 masts with 5 sails, blood red. The ship sails independent of any human input. Sure, there's a ghost crew, but the Caleuche is known for being sentient. The ship has a mind of its own. It'll glide along the water at incredible speeds and is able to submerge and continue navigating underwater, similar to the famous Flying Dutchman. When it passes, folks say you can hear the crew cackling for a brief moment. It's a ship known for the merriment of its ghostly crew. They throw parties often and hop around on one leg. The folks on board often only have one leg because the other is folded behind their back, similar to another Chilean mythological entity. To top off their strange looks and mannerisms, some crew members have backwards faces, terrifying all who lay eyes upon them. Some say the Caleuche is manned by sailors, both dead and alive, dragged from the depths and snagged off passing ships. Another legend says that the ship is piloted by the souls of the drowned, brought aboard by water spirits and granted the gift of life in exchange for their servitude. Not so sure that's a good deal, you know, life eternal, but you'll always be on a stinky ship? Maybe the parties are just that sick. Merchants who trade with Caleuche supposedly become very wealthy afterwards, and anyone who has laid eyes upon it wears a crooked smile forever. Again, interesting deal. Lots of money, crooked smile. I guess you could afford a dentist and some plastic surgery at that point. Coming in at number 3, we've got the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait. Yes, Canadian ghost pirates. That pretty much sums up my career aspirations right there. I don't know if that means I would be pirating software related to ghosts or actually becoming a phantom upon the Northumberland Strait, but I don't really care as long as my title involves the words Canadian, ghost, and pirate. But back to the actual tale at hand. This ghost ship is said to sail when it's on fire within the Northumberland Strait. What is the Northumberland Strait? It is a body of water that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick in eastern Canada. Now you all know some Canadian geography. I'm so proud of you. The story dates back over 200 years when people started reporting a beautiful schooner catching fire and being engulfed in flames as people watched from shore. Anyone who has ever attempted a rescue mission finds that the ship completely disappears before they can reach it. Apparently the ship shows up before a northeast wind, forewarning terrible storms. Some say it's just an example of St. Elmo's fire, a rare weather condition involving the ionization of air molecules in order to produce a faint glow, but those who have seen the ship ablaze say that it was much too bright to be explained away like that. The prevailing story is that a pirate made a pact with the devil to protect and hide his treasure, and in return, he and his crew would sail forever on the burning ship. A pact was made as the ship was burning down and would soon sink along with the treasure. In the end, folks claim that their fate was revenge for the terrible deeds they had done in their days of piracy, like their own personal floating hell. Coming in at number 2, we have Baron Falkenberg, a tale of lovers scorned, brothers bashed, and dice rolled. This pirate haunts Germany's North Sea and has been for over 600 years. Baron Falkenberg was a relatively wealthy member of high society, planning to propose to the village's most beautiful maiden. Then his long-lost brother returned with newly found riches and proposed to her first. At the wedding, the Baron became so upset with his brother that he clubbed him over the head with a bottle of champagne. Classy. Naturally, the brother dropped dead. Seeing this, his bride ran away, claiming that she'd rather die than be with the Baron. Ouch. So the Baron did what any rational fratricidal maniac would do, and stabbed her in the heart. How romantic. Then he ran away to the beach, where he was accosted by a shady man on a boat. This mysterious figure invited him to the ship where he came from, which was anchored offshore a little ways out. The Baron accepted and rowed his way to the great grey behemoth. Since entering, nobody has seen him disembark, and he's been at sea for centuries. The ship he boarded always seems to be heading due north, and flickers of blue flame. Some passersby claim to have seen the Baron himself playing dice with the devil in order to take back control of his soul. Unfortunately, it appears to be very difficult to win a game of chance against the devil. An additional caveat that can be added is that there are those who will claim that the story of the Baron is also connected to a Norse ghost story. The story tells the tale of a Viking sea captain who stole a magic ring from the gods. As punishment for his crimes, he was turned into a living skeleton covered in fire, condemned to spend the rest of eternity affixed to the mast of a ghostly longship. Whether the two stories are about the same ship, it's hard to say. However, I think we can all agree that a flaming skeleton pirate is pretty badass. And finally at number 1, we have the Flying Dutchman. We saved the most well known for last. The legendary ghost ship is said to glow with ghostly light as it sails the 7 seas. It will attempt to send messages to land or to people long dead if hailed. Unfortunately, nobody really wants to hail this ship, as the sight of it is seen to be a portent of doom. Like most ghostly ships, the Dutchman can never make port and is doomed to sail the oceans forever. It's theorized that the spectral seafarer had been rounding the treacherous Cape of Good Hope when it encountered a sudden storm. The hatches were battened down and the captain swore he would push right through come hell or high water, and it turns out a little bit of both were on the menu. For his recklessness with his ship and crew, the captain was divinely punished. He was condemned to sail the seas for eternity, serving as a warning to other mariners of bad weather and the cost of hubris. Sightings of the Dutchman have been reported since the 18th century, with many notable scallywags and scurvy dogs laying eyes on the ghastly vessel. Even Prince George of Wales described seeing a ship glowing with a strange light. If you see a ship with skeletons dancing in the rigging, steer clear. It might look like fun, but the captain will try to lure other vessels onto the rocks to ensure nobody else can pass the cape. Sheesh. Remind me not to take a long sailing trip.
Number 5, Oarfish. Coming in at the number 5 spot is this terrifying 16-foot long monstrosity hauled out of the ocean by Chilean fishermen, shocking those who learned, like me, that fish can be 5 meters long sometimes. The clip was posted to TikTok, where it went viral almost immediately, sweeping up 10 million views pretty quickly. Most people worried this fish might be a bringer of bad times, and there might be an inkling of truth to that. This fish, called an oarfish, is thought in some cultures to be an omen of impending bad fortune. I mean, I understand it completely. If I picked this thing out of the water, I would not think that I had been blessed by good fortune. In Japanese folklore, this fish is sometimes referred to as Ryogo no Tsukai, translating to the messenger from the sea god's palace, and I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation, I'm so very sorry. It's linked to the legend of Namazu, a giant sea snake which caused earthquakes whenever it would rise. Oarfish live deep in the depths of the sea. And some scientists theorize that they only ever rise nearer to surface level whenever there's a disturbance in the tectonic plates, which would definitely make this fish a bad omen and a bringer of earthquakes. Now the actual oarfish, once you get aside all the legend, terrifying as it might look, is a bit of a gentle giant. It's the largest bony fish in the world, and it isn't much of a predator, preferring to swim around just hoovering up plankton. They barely even have teeth, to be honest, and they don't really pose a threat to humans. Unless you consider scaring the heck out of you a threat. You want to watch more scary sea creature videos? Well, I got great news for you because we have loads upon loads on the channel. Number 4, green-eyed shark. Now, if the ocean is where all the scariest stuff in the world is hiding, that goes triple for any body of water around Australia, which is home to some of the actual most terrifying entities ever to walk the planet, and swim the planet, and fly the planet. It's where they send the animals that are too hardcore for the rest of the world. An Australian angler, Trapman Bermagee, pulled out this disgusting wretch of a fish, some 2,000 feet beneath the sea. He captioned it, "The face of a deep sea rough-skinned shark." Now, a little bit of a fake Australian accent there, I can't help it. Unsurprisingly, most commenters wanted to point out how disgusting the thing was, which is very similar to what I'm doing now. Now, usually I'm a sucker for green eyes, but not on this leathery little monster. This thing looks like a baseball glove that came to life. I'm not having it. There's actually a lot of debate as to what this little thing is. Some commenters had suggested that it was a cookie cutter shark, which might sound adorable when you hear that. That sounds pretty cute, but I promise you it is not cute at all. A cookie cutter shark is named that because of its jagged mouth, which leaves cookie cutter-like imprints on its victims, just like big holes in anything that it's biting at. However, the fisherman pointed out this wasn't a cookie cutter shark. A cookie cutter shark looks absolutely vile, but in a very different way. A cookie cutter shark looks more like a mole rat that was left in the sun for a few weeks, whereas this thing looks like it was grilled before ever being born. Now, another commenter suggested that this shark could be something called an endeavor spur dog shark, which is a mouthful and a half. Now, whatever the creature is, it goes without saying, I want very little to do with this shark. Number 3, long-nosed chimera. You wouldn't really expect anything horrifying to exist in Newfoundland. It's a very pleasant place. You think it's mostly just chips and Jig's dinner all the way down. Well, for Gary Goodyear, a fisherman out of Templeman, Newfoundland, he pulled this long-nosed chimera out of the water and gave himself quite the shock. His nets went some 2,000 feet down into the water, where he unearthed this long-beaked mystery fish. When he pulled it up, the crew could not believe what they had seen. It was not at all what they were expecting. I have to include this quote from one of the articles because it's too newfie not to include. Goodyear said, "We're hauling away and by I seen this coming around the roller. I said, good God, what in the heck is that?" Now, when he first pulled it up, he wondered at first if it might have been a platypus because of the impressive snoot on the beast. He described this pelagic nightmare's beak as being very rubbery, like cartilage. No one on the boat had any idea what they had found, so they kept the body of the fish and took it to a local fishery in the hopes that someone could properly ID their mystery monster. Luckily, somebody actually knew, and it got correctly identified as a long-nosed chimera, an ancient deep-sea dwelling fish famous for its green eyes and, putting this gently, its monstrous appearance. The reason that its nose felt like cartilage is because the fish is completely cartilage from nose to tail. It's actually boneless. So this fish is a spineless coward. The creature most likely perished as it was being pulled up. An extreme pressure change from being 2,000 feet beneath the sea gave it a serious case of the bends. Maybe was a blessing in disguise, because I'm not sure I'd want to see this thing alive. I'm not sure I'd want to see it thrashing around on the floor of a commercial fishing boat. I think that wouldn't be good for anybody. Number 2, decorator crab. Our next spot comes to us all the way from Thailand. Some local fishermen in Koh Yao Noi pulled up their nets while fishing for crabs and discovered they'd brought up an alien-looking creature with them that mystified them. They couldn't identify this thing. Take a look at this creepy little crawly. Kinda looks like a spider that's got a good fashion sense, got really into accessorizing. But it almost kinda looks like it shouldn't be moving at all. Like it's just some garbage that got cursed into being alive, or maybe some seaweed that developed sentience. The fishermen were understandably pretty puzzled by this thing, so they decided to post a video of the then unidentified critter, hoping to get some answers, and for once, the internet was actually helpful. The creature was correctly identified as a decorator crab, which is not something I'd heard of before this video, but I am so glad I learned about it, and I am even happier that I can pass it on to you. A decorator crab gets its name for its habit of using whatever it can scavenge around its environment to make into camouflage from predators. Now, the really cool thing is that they'll use literally anything they can find. Debris, garbage. They'll even use little bits of other animals in a gruesome manner, like fins or parts of a crab shell. If it can be attached to it in some way, a decorator crab will stick it to itself. They're covered in tiny Velcro-like hairs that allow them to attach their findings easily. I would love having that. It would save me so much time getting dressed. They've been recorded chewing on things like kelp or seaweed to break them down into more easily attachable accessories. Now, most of the creatures on this list have been weird and scary and kind of look horrifying. And I'm not gonna lie, the decorator crab kind of looks pretty scary too, but I absolutely adore the decorator crab. It is showing up every other creature in the ocean when it comes to outfits. I love the garbage costume. It's given camp in a very good way. This thing is like a crab Lady Gaga, and I love it. Number 1, ghost shark. Roman Fedortsov routinely entertains his 600,000 Instagram followers with pictures of all the strange creatures he fishes up while sailing around Murmansk, a port city in Russia. His Instagram is a treasure trove of scary undersea finds, and I absolutely recommend that you toss him a follow if you're into this sort of thing, as he's kind of the head honcho for it. This video could easily just have been 5 things that he fished out himself. Nobody is pulling out weird things the way Roman is. But with so many to choose from, I had a tough time, but I landed on this here fish, sometimes called Frankenstein's fish, due to the stitches all over its body looking like it's been sewn together from the bodies of several other fishes. It's also been referred to as a ratfish, a ghost shark, a spookfish, but officially they're known as ghost chimeras. I like that it's got nothing but scary nicknames. These things are bad news from teeth to tail. They have a spiny dorsal fin that's poisonous to the touch. It's got a mouth of rat-like teeth that helps it grind down anything it catches, crushing its prey in its jaws. Usually goes after things like crabs or prawns, so the rat teeth help pulverize the shells. These little things also have an inherent ability to detect the electric fields produced by other creatures, and I wish I knew even the littlest bit about biology because this fish sounds like it's magic. Fish also sounds overpowered, not gonna lie. Now, I think as a little treat, we ought to have a little slideshow at the end of just a bunch of Fedortsov's weirdest catches, and I'll just react to them. Ready? Okay, here we go, lightning round. Who would make this? Why would a creature evolve like this? I guarantee you this thing looks cuter as sashimi. That is a face not even Mother Nature could love, if that even is a face. You know what, this one I'm actually kind of coming around to. I wouldn't touch it, I wouldn't order it, but I kind of like it.
Number 5, the frilled shark. Chlamydoslacus ingenius and Chlamydoslacus africana, or better known as the frilled shark and the frilled South African shark, are the 2 extinct species of shark that swam our oceans. Thank gosh. Well, actually, still kinda do. The frilled shark is considered a living fossil, not just its age and time spent surfing the coast, due to its primitive eel-like physical trait, the brown color, the jaws, 8-foot body, and the way its fins, spine, and head move under the water are common in ancient serpents and water creatures. So this thing is like an eel-serpent-shark hybrid. Yeah. Little jarring, commonly referred to simply as the frilled shark because of its 6 pairs of gill slits at its throat. It swims amongst the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, usually in deep, dark, murky waters of the outer continental shelf and upper continental slope. These deep dive sharks usually live and sleep near the ocean floor. Okay, that's a good sign, of course. They live on a diet of cephalopods, smaller sharks, and even swim to the surface at night to feed what's floating atop on the surface. When hunting, the frilled shark moves like an eel, bending and slithering to swallow prey with its long and flexible jaws, which are equipped with 300 rows of recurved, needle-like teeth. So am I just gonna like snorkel into one of these things any day now? Well, good thing is they're really hard to find. Like, really hard. Usually caught by accident in commercial fishing nets, usually at depths anywhere between 50 and 1,000 meters. So unless you're free diving at night, you should be okay. Yeah, they like it deep and dark. I'd say these things are already scarier than the Meg. It's like a shark but an eel-snake hybrid with a shark head and shark-size teeth. That sounds a bit scarier. Well, I mean, the Meg preferred warmer, shallower waters, so maybe this one's a tie. I don't know who's snorkeling 2 miles deep, but it's certainly not me, okay? In my opinion, I'd take a large great white over this dinosaur-looking thing slithering after me any day. Number 4, the fang-toothed fish. Ah yes, the Anoplogaster cornuta, or commonly known as the fang-tooth. I wonder why. Though they spend most of their time in the deep, common fangtooths are known to migrate towards the surface at night. Sorry, the fangtooths are known to migrate towards the surface at night. That is the scariest sentence I've ever said. Dude, these are way scarier than this giant ancient shark. Like, all the scariest things come out at night, you notice that? And root canals, but they're usually done during the day. The word megalodon is Greek words meaning giant tooth. I'd take big teeth over this thing chasing me around any day. Thankfully though, this guy is only about 1 foot in length. Okay, that's not so bad. The fish has a mouth that are full of long snake teeth, perfect for hanging onto its prey as they shake. The lockable jaws ensure that, although thrashing may occur, the fangtooth's teeth are locked clamps that effortlessly swim with dinner in its mouth, just getting dragged deeper and deeper down, wiggling and can't move, trying to run for their lives. Well, swim for their lives. And fish of any size. I'm sorry? Yep. Any size. Common fangtooths have been recorded at depths of about 5,000 meters, so whatever lives down there, it's game on. Look at this thing. I was scared of sunfish and seaweed brushing up against my legs. This thing swimming by me, this thing? It looks like a night terror in itself, stalking their preferred prey of crustaceans and, of course, other fishes the same size. Common fangtooths are more active than many other deep-sea fish and seek out food for meal and sport rather than being purely ambush predators eating when they're hungry. That's terrifying. Packing up for the long winter, huh? Their huge mouth and very long teeth ensure that they are able to attack prey and actually hold on while they relocate them to a deeper, darker spot where they can kind of take their time on the meal. I've swam with sharks. In my opinion, this thing's way scarier. Like, eating small critters running around the ocean floor, sure, but also imagine eating something the same size of itself with teeth? No problem? Slowly devouring it, bite by bite? Yeah, that's way scarier, come on. Just reattaching itself every bite? Taking you along for the free ride? Yeah, that's horrifying. And number 3, the big fin squid. Of the genus Magnapinidae family, the big fin squid, or as I like to call it, this ocean alien with shoulders, belongs to a group of rarely seen cephalopods with a distinctive morphology, meaning they're really, really weird and rare. Magnapini meaning big fin, of course. The first record of us catching and looking at this family comes from a specimen talismani caught off the Azores in 1907. This was our first look at this bizarre fish, but due to the damaged nature of the find, little information could be extracted and was classified just as a squid. The problem is when you pull these things out of its atmosphere, it just looks like a piece of wet crinoline dress all of a sudden. Don't get the whole terrifying effect, you know? In 1956, a similar squid was caught in the South Atlantic, but during the 80s, 2 specimens were found in the Atlantic, then 3 more were found in the Pacific, and eventually the creatures found a place amongst the books as its own species, entering the family Magnapinidae. Squids. Okay, so it's not actually a squid, but loosely related. Like a third cousin of maybe alien origin. This thing looks like it crashed here on an asteroid, I'm just gonna say it, doesn't it? Like there's only 12 of these, not many. The arms and tentacles are the same length. The appendages are also huge and held perpendicular to the body, creating the appearance of a illusion of arms and elbows, giving its trademark alien figure. Most remarkable is the length of the elastic tentacles, which has been estimated around 20 to 30 times its mass and length. Deep sea video evidence puts the total length of the largest specimens at 10 meters long. Yeah, that's 2 trucks. Close-ups of the body and head show us that the fins are extremely large, being proportionately nearly as big as those of a big fin squid. Hence, the comparison. While they do appear similar, no specimens or samples of the adults have been taken out of the water yet, leaving their exact identity, bodily functions, and internal organs a mystery. Awesome. Yes, more mysteries under the water. Alright, I only had really bad night terrors already. Let's just add this in there. Yeah, I'd take a shark swimming with a brain at me rather than this alien thing swimming up to me and just staring at me, trying to understand me for about an hour. Terrifying. Number 2, the gulper eel. Eurypharynx pelicanoides. The pelican eel, or what I just said, is basically a deep sea eel. Like deep, deep sea. If you've seen the Ridley Scott's Alien film franchise or the Predator universe, you'll know that this thing looks exactly like that. Yeah, am I wrong? But instead of like 8 feet tall, it's only 3 feet tall. Yeah, still terrifying. The pelican eel has been described by many synonyms, yet nobody has been able to demonstrate that more than one species of pelican eel exists. Riding solo, huh? That's creepy. One of a kind kinda deal. It's also commonly known as the gulper eel, or umbrella mouth gulper eel, due to its terrifying size and function of its mouth. The mouth and jaws resemble a pelican's gulp, hence the name. The morphology of the pelican eel can be difficult to describe because they're so fragile and oddly shaped that they become damaged when they're pulled out of the deep sea's immense pressure. We can't just swim all the way down there and take pictures, you know? The pelican eel's most notable feature, its mouth, which is much, much larger than its body, like 5 times the size. The mouth is loosely hinged and can be opened wide enough to swallow a fish 3 times its size. This thing has like a lower mandible of a python, just like unhinging it before dinner. The lower jaw is hinged at the base of the head with no body mass behind it, making the head look abysmally huge. It's basically a swimming mouth with a spine, tail, and I think a brain? Yeah, we don't really know yet. With dot-sized eyes, yeah. It usually is always moving too, rarely stationary. It hunts in some sort of folded state. The pelican eel's mouth has the capability to change to an inflated shape when hunting, giving the mouth its notably massive appearance. Dude, the mouth unfolds like the James Webb telescope. Like 100 working parts. Technically, it's like a geometric shape unfolding as a mouth, followed by stretching, like a cootie catcher. Remember those? This thing eats like a cootie catcher. When the pelican eel is in pursuit of its prey, it slowly starts unfolding itself. Imagine this thing's trucking behind you, unhinging its jaw, slowly the closer it gets. The head and jaw structure unfold and spread horizontally, not vertically. Okay, that's scarier all of a sudden. The unspreading event, or as I like to call it, lunch, is followed by the inflation of the mouth from a stretchable skin of the head, which it feeds on prey. Then, water's expelled via the gills. Okay, so it's basically a large strainer, and after it eats, it blows itself out, releases all the water back into the water. just wrings itself out. Come on, this thing is horrifying. Thank gosh it only eats crustaceans and creepy little crawlies on the bottom seafloor. And number 1, the phantom jellyfish. Stygiomedusa gigantea. I love that word. Commonly known as the giant phantom jellyfish, is a part of the monotypic genus of deep-sea jellyfish, Stygiomedusa. With only around 110 sightings in 110 years, it's a jellyfish that is rarely seen. Well, I guess like once a year. I don't know, I'm not really good at math. Believed to be widespread throughout the world, it thrives in all oceans and seas, with the exception of the Arctic Ocean. Yeah, a little too cold for it. The Monterey Bay Aquarium remotely operated underwater vehicles have only sighted the beast 27 times in 27 years. Dude, what's with all the matching numbers? Is this CIA run? A study conducted by the Journal of the Marine Biological Association of the UK revealed info regarding the species and had this to say. The Gigantea is thought to be one of the largest invertebrate predators on this planet. One more time please. The largest predator. It is commonly found in the ocean's midnight zone, reaching depths of about 7,000 meters. Deepest human free dive is about 300 meters. Okay. Yeah, we're good. Unless you have a wide lung span. The largest predators in the deep sea, the giant phantom jellyfish's typical prey consists of plankton and small fish. The S. gigantea tends to be dominant in locations with a low productivity system, meaning it deters other predators of fish. Like, it likes it quiet. A shy eater, I'd say. However, when this thing is hungry, it battles squids, eels, and even whales. Okay, never mind. Just when I thought this thing was really cute, it fights off whales for food. The first specimen, weighing in at 100 pounds, was collected in 1899, but it wasn't recognized as its own species until 1959. Imagine this thing chasing you and catching you, tangling you in like 100 feet of netting tentacles so it can just eat you slowly. Does this thing have a consciousness? Like, you can kind of tell if a shark is swimming near or close to you or what it's kind of feeling. This thing just slowly, softly swimming towards you before it ingests you? Way scarier. Like, I'm convinced these landed here. The oceans are way scarier than things on land. We haven't even started to uncover the whole ecosystem yet.
Number 5, the Mary Celeste. Our first entry on the list of ghost ships today is the story of the Mary Celeste, a ghost ship where the crew abandoned it for a reason no one knows. In 1872, the captain, one Benjamin Briggs, cast off out of New York's docks to travel to Italy. On board were the captain, his wife, their young daughter, and a small crew of 8 seasoned sailors coming with them. The voyage seemed like a success until it was found by another ship, the Del Gratia. The crew of the Del Gratia approached the Celeste since it was barreling forward at full speed and full sail without anybody manning the crew. So the Del Gratia boarded it to investigate and found more questions than they had before, as there was barely a sign of life. If they hadn't found it freely floating, they would have assumed the ship had just been built. There was a little bit of water in the hold and a lifeboat was missing, but other than that, the ship was fully intact. The hull undamaged, the hold replete with food and water and other supplies. So what happened? Why would the captain and the crew abandon a perfectly serviceable, well-stocked ship, especially one that was carrying his own family? Now, there have been theories over the course of the years. Piracy is a fairly common suggestion, suggesting they were attacked, but if the ship had been raided, why did they leave all the food and water behind and leave the ship freely floating? It's not like a pirate to leave anything valuable behind, anything at all. The ship was still on course to their destination, and the logbook found on board stated that the Mary Celeste was on the right path, so what happened there? They were going the right way. It's worth mentioning that before this strange occurrence, the Mary Celeste already had a checkered history. It was originally known as the Amazon before Jeff Bezos sued. No, it was the Amazon, but it was given a new name after a series of mishaps led crews to believe it was a cursed ship. The first captain died of an extreme sickness, and on one of the first voyages, the Amazon crashed into another ship. So it was renamed the Mary Celeste, hoping perhaps that a new name and a coat of paint could salvage its reputation. If only that was the case. The Celeste was recovered and sailed a few more years before being run down for insurance purposes, and to date, no one knows what ever became of Benjamin Briggs and his crew. And if you're looking for more ghost stories, not necessarily nautical, but ghost stories of any variety, Top 5 Scary has loads of that and then some. We've got just about everything freaky you can think of. So click on through and hit subscribe. Please make sure you hit that bell. But would you kindly do that at the end of this video, because I got way more stories about haunted ships coming up for you right now. Let's get back into it. Number 4, the Jenny. Way back in the era of exploration, when ships sailed across the sea, the South Pole was one of the most treacherous passes an explorer could make, and countless sailors sailed their last expedition around the Antarctic. One such ship is a small schooner called the Jenny. Now, we really don't know much about this ship, the purpose of its original mission, really even who was sailing on it. What we know of the Jenny comes from the post-mortem, when it was found discovered by a whaling ship in the year 1860. The Hope was sailing through when it spotted a battered schooner, beaten but somehow still sailing around, passing narrowly through the gap between two icebergs. The crew of the Hope closed in. This was quite an odd sight. They recognized the English flag atop the mast and assumed the ship was in grave danger and needed immediate assistance, so they sailed on forward. They saw 7 men standing on the deck, although they looked gravely underdressed for the weather conditions and not particularly active at all. These guys were sort of just chilling out up there. It wasn't until the Hope sailed close enough that they realized the men they were looking at on the Jenny weren't just sluggish, but they were frozen remains. Frozen in place, as if they'd been frozen flash solid, as if it happened in an instant. They appeared to be in mostly good condition. I know that sounds incredibly bizarre to say that about a corpse, but they weren't showing signs of decomposition or any physical injuries. The Hope's captain, Captain Brighton, boarded the Jenny to try and understand what was going on here. He went underneath the decks and found a man slumped over a barrel with a journal in his hands. Brighton went up to touch him, but realized immediately, like everyone else, he had been frozen in place. So he pried the journal from his cold, dead hands and read the last chilling entry. Chilling. I didn't even mean to say that. That was a little pun. That's what my comedy degree paid for. May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the last one alive. If the log was to be believed, then that would mean the crew had been sailing as corpses aimlessly for decades, as if not a day had passed. Captain Brighton took the journal home with him to return one day. And tragically, the wife of the Jenny's captain was found dead in the bedroom cabin alongside the ship's dog. The Hope sailed off with nothing more than the journal and left the Jenny floating across the frozen water, where she may still be to this day, or perhaps she's plunged deep beneath the water. Wherever she is, I hope those men found some peace and hopefully some food. Number 3, the Ourang Medan. That's a fun name. In the 1940s, there was a widespread story about a ship named the SS Ourang Medan that had exploded near Indonesia, and its entire crew was found dead under mysterious circumstances. That's a pretty good ghost story. And like any good ghost story, there's a number of variants depending on who's heard what. Some claim that the Medan was attacked by a boarding party of rabid pirates, modern-day buccaneers. Others claim that it was smuggling dangerous secret chemicals that poisoned the crew and caused the ship to explode. And of course, we're on Top 5 Scary. I love wild speculation, so I'll say I think aliens did it, and who are you to tell me I'm wrong? It could be something paranormal. Interestingly, despite this story being so widespread and repeated, there doesn't actually appear to be many records of this ship. So did it really exist? Or was the whole thing just a ghost story altogether? It's believed that the ship was passing through the Strait of Malacca during the 1940s, and one of its first references was that of a passing ship that was said to have picked up a radio signal coming from the Medan, reading out the very creepy message of, "We float. All officers, including the captain, dead in the chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead. I die." That's something out of a Stephen King book, man. The vessel was an American ship called the Silver Star, and it went out to investigate probably the scariest message you could ever get at sea. What they found, they couldn't have prepared themselves for. The entire crew was dead with, I quote, "teeth bared, with their upturned faces to the sun, staring as if in fear." The ship's dog had died too. But most bizarre was that none of these bodies showed any signs of a physical struggle. Some believe the ship had been carrying toxic materials and poisoned the crew, and that seems possible, but honestly, given off of what I just read, that sounds way more like it's supernatural. I think demons were involved. If you've ever seen the movie Event Horizon, this seems a lot like it was an Event Horizon situation. Number 2, the Young Teaser. So they called me in high school. Unlike a lot of other ships on this list that had served as merchant vessels, the Young Teaser, true to its name, was a bit of a wild card rebel as far as ships go, and was a notorious pirate schooner flying the black flag and was famous for its speeds. The Young Teaser had made a name for itself as a dangerous ship around Mahone Bay, notable for several successful raids, which is a lot easier said than done. I don't know if you've ever tried to board an enemy ship, it's very complicated. A whole lot wrong can happen on the ocean, and in the year of 1813, the teaser had met a match it couldn't outplay, when it was cornered by a Nova Scotian officer by the name of Sir John Sherbrooke. Sherbrooke was a decorated military officer. He was a veteran of the War of 1812 and was looking to continue his path of glory, get another medal on the chest by capturing the teaser and its crew and bringing them back to the crown to face justice for years of plundering. Sherbrooke was ready to board the teaser, but he noticed that a privateer aboard it had already begun lighting their own ship on fire. Instead, the pirates had chosen to go up in flames rather than face the noose back in England. Now, a pirate choosing death before capture isn't the most wild story. I'd wager a lot more pirates did that than Jack Sparrow would have you believe, but it's how the teaser's legacy carries on that gives it a spot on this list. Ask a Nova Scotian around the bay and they might tell you one of their more famous ghost stories. That on June 27th of every year, the otherwise peaceful Mahone Bay is overcome by fog, smoke, and the curdling screams of the damned crew whose souls are still trapped in the bay. They say on a real foggy night you can see the burning ship still sailing through. Some people even saying they see spectral sailors hanging off the riggings. Some boaters say that they see the ship charging towards them as if it was still marauding out and about, only when it's about to crash into another ship, it vanishes into thin air, leaving behind a cloud of smoke and fog in its place as if it was never there. And number 1, the Carol Deering. Now, we've been talking about ghost ships this whole video and, weird things that have happened to ships going missing, but we've yet to bring up my favorite anomalous triangle outside of Bermuda. So let's fix that, eh? Let's talk about the ghost ship, the Carol A. Deering. It was 1929 and the Deering was returning home from the Hamptons to Barbados, passing a Cape Lookout lightship. A man on the lightship called out to the Deering because he thought the crew looked aimless. They told him that the Carol Deering had lost its anchors, which I don't know if you know a lot about ships, that's a bad thing for a ship to lose. The Carol Deering kept making its way forward. I guess the lightship didn't have any anchors to lend out or anything, where it was spotted again a few days later by a ship called the SS Lake Elon, with its captain reporting that the behavior of the Carol Deering was very odd. He described it as steering a peculiar course. And that would be the last time anyone saw the crew of the Carol Deering alive. 2 days later, the Carol Deering was discovered by the Coast Guard washed up on a nearby shore. The ship was missing its lifeboats and the decks were flooded. A rescue crew went in to investigate and were baffled by what they found. The ship had been picked clean. It was missing all its documents, all important equipment, belongings. It was stripped to the walls. The lifeboats and anchors were all gone and there wasn't a single sign of life in the ship, with the exception of one oddity. A beautiful feast laid out for the entire crew that had been untouched. Not a nibble taken out of it. No one knows what became of the crew of the Deering. There's always been theories. Some people think maybe they mutinied against their captain and fled. Some people think they were taken by the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Was their ship stolen? Or maybe they all just went home. We might never know.
Kicking off today's list, we have the sunken city of Dwarka. Until roughly 50 years ago, it was simply a legend, a story passed throughout the ages. The most famous legend about the lost city of Dwarka can be found in the ancient epic of Mahabharata. Dwarka, similar to Atlantis, is said to have sunk beneath the sea at some point in the distant past. According to the sacred scripture of Srimad Bhagavatam, the city of Dwarka was built in response to Jarasandha, the ruler of Magadha, who was constantly attacking Mathura. To prevent further attacks on his clan, Lord Krishna decided to establish a separate city on India's western coast. The city quickly rose to prominence and began the unstoppable pivot of Lord Krishna's mission, housing thousands of people in approximately 900 palaces that were crafted out of silver, gold, and precious stones, along with being heavily fortified and could only be reached by ship. At the time, the city of Dwarka quickly became a talking point around the world, inspiring awe and wonder. According to the Mahabharata's 23rd and 34th stanzas, the city was inundated and submerged by the Arabian Sea on the day that Krishna departed the earth to join the spiritual world after 125 years, and this is when the Kali Age began. The ocean's deity reclaimed the land, sinking the lost city of Dwarka, but sparing Lord Krishna's palace. It is also said that the lost city of Dwarka was attacked by Vimana, a flying machine. The description of the fight encourages ancient alien theories, as it appears that it was fought with sophisticated technology and powerful weapons from orbit. The spacecraft launched an attack on the city using energy weaponry, which resembled a lightning strike to onlookers, and it was so devastating that much of the city lay in ruins following the attack. a marine scientist discovered remnants of an underwater civilization near the coast of Dorka, the city that's still on land that is, in the 1970s, and in 2002, scientists discovered an extremely advanced civilization from the past lying untouched beneath the ocean's surface. With the help of sound matrix and image technology, along with sub-bottom profiling, marine scientists were able to find the exact location of the city, including some stone structures. The lost city of Dorka was officially found 120 feet underwater in the Gulf of Cambat off the western coast of India. Thanks to carbon testing, it was established that the city is anywhere between 7,000 to 9,500 years old and stretches out 7 to 8 kilometers long and 3 to 4 kilometers in width. The most fascinating, or creepy thing about this underwater city, depending on your point of view, is that all human remains are still intact. Ergo, the main reason it made its way to today's list. Look, I'm not a scuba diver, but I can't think I'd be too fond of swimming around casually, admiring, architecture, and bam! Perfectly preserved dead bodies. During the 2002 excavation of Dorka, many mud vessels, temple bells, ancient ritualistic vessels, and other artifacts were found, with the carbon dating indicating that they date back to roughly 7,200 BC, otherwise known as the prehistoric period. At the time of this research, scientists also found that a massive man-made wall that's almost 2,000 feet tall that has since been unearthed during periods of low tide and can't be easily seen. Granted, they're still waiting on absolute results from some strange structures made of iron they weren't able to identify. Maybe they're from the aliens? In fourth place, we have the Antarctica sea spiders. Okay, I'll admit it now, this one might be on the list purely because of how much it made me jump while researching. Seriously, look at the photos of these things. Yeah, this reaction is genuine. If I get nightmares tonight, I'm blaming y'all, okay? Before I start talking specifically about the big guys, time to dive into exactly what sea spiders are. Sea spiders are marine arthropods of the Pantopoda order and belong to the Pycnogonida class. They're cosmopolitan, and well, to some of us that sounds like a fancy drink. It just means they're found in oceans around the world. Lucky for me. There's over 1,300 known species, and they have legs ranging from 1 millimeter to over 70 centimeters in length, and that's over 2 feet in length. While most of them are towards the smaller end of this range, that one qualify as terrifying now. Would it? Although sea spiders are not true spiders, or even arachnids, their traditional classification as chelicerates would place them closer to true spiders than to other well-known arthropod groups, such as insects or crustaceans if correct. Sea spiders tend to either walk along the bottom of the ocean with their stilt-like legs, or just swim above it using an umbrella pulsing motion. They're mostly carnivorous predators or scavengers that feed on sponges, polychaetes, and bryozoans. Alright, time to talk specifically about the big guys. Those really long legs I mentioned a moment ago are everything to the Antarctic sea spider, since they're where its vital organs are kept, because it doesn't have much of a body. Its proboscis is also important because that's what it uses to suck the insides out of worms, jellyfish, sponges, and other soft body prey. Sounds delicious, I guess? Right now, all I can picture is like that one scene from The Lion King where Timon and Pumbaa are sucking the insides out of squishy bugs, and I'm pretty sure Simba and I are having the exact same facial reaction. For my brain's sake, it's highly unlikely for most of us to ever come across one of the giant spiders, since they only live in the oceans around the polar regions. Gigantism has been observed in a number of other Arctic and Antarctic species, leading to biologists to consult a couple of theories that certain elements of the polar environment must be conducive to humongous body size. Over several hypotheses have been put forward, with some scientists claiming that large body size may have developed as an evolutionary trait to enable animals to withstand long periods of starvation during the winter, when resources tend to become, scarce in the polar regions. While others have suggested that some of these species may be somehow descended from creatures that invaded the Arctic and Antarctic from the deep sea, where high rates of gigantism have also been recorded. However, a recent study lends support to an entirely different theory, which revolves around the availability of oxygen in the polar oceans, since oxygen is more soluble in cold water than warm water. It has been suggested that this high availability of oxygen, coupled with the fact that low temperatures slow animals' metabolism down and reduce their need for oxygen, could facilitate their gigantism. And hey, they're not venomous, so overall, they're not as dangerous. But that's not gonna stop my fears. In third place, we have the Mariana Trench. I'm just gonna apologize in advance because I know I'll slip up at some point, if not every time, and say Marianas Trench out of habit. I can't help it. They're my favorite band. Even writing up my points today, I kept adding in the extra S. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you're also a fan. The Mariana Trench is an oceanic trench located in the western Pacific Ocean, about 200 kilometers east of the Mariana Islands, and it is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. It's crescent-shaped and measures about 2,550 kilometers in length and 69 kilometers in width. The maximum known depth is roughly over 36,000 feet, plus or minus another 80 feet, which is way too much math for my brain. At the southern end of a small slot-shaped valley and its floor known as the Challenger Deep. For reference, if Mount Everest was located at this point in the trench, its peak would still be underwater by more than 2 kilometers. And just remember, that's the world's tallest mountain we're talking about here, not some cute little hike. The Mariana Trench has been a major area of intrigue throughout history, with the trench first being explored during the Challenger expedition in 1875 using a weighted rope, which recorded a depth of 26,850 feet. In 1877, a map was published titled the Tiefenkarte des Großen Ozeans, or Depth Map of the Great Ocean, for those of us who don't feel like butchering a pronunciation today. Most recently, in 2011, it was announced at the American Geophysical Union Fall meeting that a U.S. Navy hydrographic ship equipped with a multi-beam echo sounder had conducted a survey which mapped the entire trench to 330 feet resolution. As of 2022, 22 crewed descents and 7 uncrewed descents have been achieved. Some notable discoveries over the years include the 1960 expedition, which claimed to have observed large creatures living at the bottom, such as flatfish that were about 30 centimeters long, and shrimp. In July of 2011, a research expedition deployed untethered landers, or drop cams for those of us that prefer simple English, equipped with digital video cameras and lights to explore this deep sea region. Gigantic single-celled organisms with a size of more than 10 centimeters in diameter, belonging to the class of Monothelomia, were observed. Monothelomia are noteworthy for their size, their extreme abundance on the seafloor, and their role as hosts for a variety of organisms. In December of 2014, a new species of snailfish was discovered at a depth of approximately 26,722 feet, breaking the previous record for the deepest living fish seen on video. During that 2014 expedition, several new species were filmed, including amphipods known as supergiants, bringing us back to that deep water gigantism I talked about earlier. Now, before any of y'all go, but Alexa, why is this scary? Well, it's because it's a constant unknown. Being so large and so deep, something new and creepy is discovered every time people explore its depths. Who knows what's still hiding down there? In second place, we have the blue-ringed octopus. Now, just a little background. An octopus is a soft-bodied, 8-limbed mollusk of the Octopoda order that consists of around 300 different species. Like other cephalopods, an octopus is bilaterally symmetric, with 2 eyes and a beaked mouth at the center point of the 8 limbs. The soft body can radically alter its shape, enabling octopuses to squeeze through small gaps. The siphon is used both for respiration and for locomotion by expelling a jet of water. Octopuses have a complex nervous system and excellent sight, and are among the most intelligent and behaviorally diverse of all invertebrates. Octopuses inhabit various regions of the ocean, including coral reefs, pelagic waters, and the seabed. Some live in the intertidal zone and others at abyssal depths. All octopuses are venomous, but only the blue-ringed octopuses are known to be deadly to humans, ergo why they're my focus today. This specific species can be found in tide pools and coral reefs in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, from Japan to Australia, and can be identified by their yellowish skin and characteristic blue and black rings that change color dramatically when threatened. They eat small crustaceans, including crabs, hermit crabs, shrimp, and other small sea animals. Despite their small size that ranges from 5 to 8 inches in circumference, they are very dangerous to humans if provoked when handled because their venom contains a powerful neurotoxin tetrodotoxin, which can cause loss of all sensations and paralysis of voluntary muscles, including the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, ergo stopping breathing. The full list of possible side effects from the venom include nausea, heart failure, severe and total paralysis, blindness, and can lead to death within minutes. The blue-ringed octopus carries enough venom to kill 26 adult humans within minutes. I'm just going to repeat that to be clear, 26 adult humans within minutes. Their bites are tiny and often painless, with many victims not realizing they have been envenomated until respiratory depression and paralysis begins. Oh, and by the way, there is no such thing as blue-ringed octopus antivenom available. And finally, in first place we have the stonefish. Now, you might be asking, after the deadly octopus and a literal pit in the ocean, how can we get scarier? Welcome to where I almost jumped out of my chair and onto the floor. Stonefish are a family of fish called Cynocidae. They are famous for being the most venomous fish in the world, with a sting that causes excruciating pain in, you guessed it, humans. Their venom is lethal to other marine animals and humans, causing intense pain, breathing problems, damage to the heart, fits, and paralysis. Now, thankfully, unlike the blue-ringed octopus, there is an anti-venom, but if it's not delivered quickly, the effects can be fatal. We know of 5 different species that exist. The midget stonefish, or the Cynocea alula, estuarine stonefish, or Cynocea aurida, the Red Sea stonefish, or Cynocea nana, the Cynocea platarincha, and simply the stonefish, or Cynocea verrucos. Look, I tried my best. They hail from the coastal regions of the Indo-Pacific Ocean, so northern Australia, India, the Philippines, and others. Their name comes from their ability to blend in with rocky seafloors and amongst coral, which is what makes them easily stepped on by people and is a good chunk of the danger. They have 13 spines along their backs, which is what delivers the toxin, and at the base of each spine is a venom sac, which is activated under pressure. So, you know, when somebody accidentally steps on them. Now, if that's not terrifying enough for you, because we do have a reputation to uphold here, scientists at the University of Kansas have discovered that stonefish also have a hidden switchblade in their face that they can flick out whenever they feel like they're in danger. They call this bony, blade-like protrusion a lacrimal saber, and it's located on a bone under the fish's eyes. The saber is housed inside the fish's head, and they use their cheek muscles to deploy it. One good thing at least is that it's not venomous like their spines.
In at number 5, underwater river. Within the ocean, there was a river found, and it's known as the Black Sea Undersea River. This discovery was the first of its kind in the entire world at the time and was found in August of 2010. The underwater river is saline water flowing through the Bosporus Strait and along the seabed of the Black Sea. Before this discovery, scientists had previously found channels running along the ocean floor based on sonar screening. One of the largest is from the mouth of the Amazon River into the Atlantic Ocean and found off the coast of Greenland, the Congo, and Bengal. It was believed that these channels could possibly function as rivers. It was this discovery specifically that truly proved their theory correct. This river functions due to the salty ocean water spilling through the Bosporus Strait from the Mediterranean Sea into the Black Sea, where the water has a lower salt content. The largest of these rivers are several miles wide and run for thousands of miles out into the deep ocean, and they prove to be vital to the creatures living in and around them. In many ways, these underwater rivers are very similar to rivers we see on land. They have banks on either side, and smaller rivers feed into the larger ones. These rivers carve valleys into the sea floor, and they follow certain paths and can even change course. Due to the power and unpredictability of these rivers, they have been extremely difficult to explore and learn more about. Researchers tend to send down recording instruments and robotic submarines to try and learn more about these rivers. Sedimentologist Dan Parsons says that these rivers are incredibly powerful and have destructive flows, so it's important we understand how they work. If it was a river on the surface of the earth, then it was ranked as the 6th largest river in the world. This discovery is truly an amazing natural wonder, and because they are so hard to research, study, and learn about, it's an incredible phenomenon. In at number 4, we have Great Blue Hole. The Great Blue Hole is located in Belize and is truly a wonder. The hole is a natural sinkhole with surrounding corals and shallow water accounting for the perfect circle shape and deep blue color. It lies near the center of Lighthouse Reef, and it was formed during several occurrences of Quaternary glaciation when the sea levels were much lower. Fun fact about the Lighthouse Reef can actually be seen from space, and the Great Blue Hole is near the center of it and can see it so clearly from so far away. This site was made famous by Jacques Cousteau, who declared it one of the top 5 scuba diving sites in the world. It was first discovered in 1971 and then explored much more during an expedition in 1997 to collect core sample from the Blue Hole's floor and document the cave system. In December 2018, 2 submarines descended into the Blue Hole to be able to map its interior, and using solar scanning, they were able to make a 3D map of the 1,000-foot wide hole. They had discovered that there was a layer of hydrogen sulfide around 300 feet down. The Great Blue Hole has its name for a reason. It is extremely deep, and it has measured over 400 feet deep. At that depth, it becomes very dark, cold, and not much can survive down there. The submarine expedition also discovered bodies of 2 divers at the bottom. They were believed to be 2 out of 3 divers who had gone missing while diving there. This massive hole is a very popular spot for scuba divers for its crystal blue color and being able to see many different species in and around the area. There are many different types of fish, including the midnight parrotfish and the Caribbean reef shark, along with different shark species like the bull shark and hammerheads. In 2012, the Discovery Channel ranked the Great Blue Hole as #1 on its list of the top 10 most amazing places on Earth, and if you're interested in checking out this natural wonder, there are full-day trips from the coastal tourist communities in Belize, and you can explore the Great Blue Hole. In at number 3, we have vampire squids. Not only are vampires on land, but they also been found in the ocean. The vampire squids reside throughout the oceans all around the world, mainly in tropical oceans in extreme deep sea conditions. This squid uses its organs and its unique oxygen metabolism to be able to thrive in the parts of the ocean with the lowest concentrations of oxygen, which is extremely hard to do for many other sea creatures. The vampire squid is the only known cephalopod able to live its entire life in what's known as the oxygen minimum zone, at saturations as low as 3%. These squids were discovered during the Valdivia expedition in 1898, which was led by Carl Chun, a zoologist who was inspired by the Challenger expedition, and wanted to verify that life does indeed exist below 300 feet. Back then, much of the sea wasn't known about, let alone explored, so this was very new for that time, and during the expedition, the vampire squid was found. When the discovery was made, they were originally described as an octopus because of their physical appearance, and 8 arms, but they are united by a web of skin and were later assigned to be part of the squid family. These scary sea creatures can grow to a length of 1 foot, and their gelatinous body varies in color from jet black to a pale reddish depending on location and lighting conditions. Its blue or red colored eyes are some of the largest in the entire animal kingdom. If these creatures become agitated, they will eject a sticky cloud of glow-in-the-dark like mucus, which will stick to their predators and make them visible to other predators while the vampire squid escapes. In at number 2, we have chimera fish. These fish are famously called the voodoo doll fish because they look like someone took many different types of parts of fish and mashed them all together, creating a terrifying looking deep sea creature. In Greek mythology, the chimera was a monstrous fire-breathing hybrid creature. These fish are closely related to sharks, and to date there are 50 species of chimera have been recorded worldwide. Most of these fish can be found in the deep ocean, in depths of over 500 meters down, so little is known about these mysterious deep sea animals because they are so difficult to study, let alone find. The chimera fish varies in color from black to pale blue to brownish gray and have long bodies with exceptionally large heads. Their eyes are large and translucent with a green color which helps them to see in the dark deep sea. These fish tend to feed on bottom-dwelling creatures like crabs, octopi, marine worms, and sea urchins. The chimera crush their prey with their 3 rows of sharp teeth, and like sharks they use electroreception to find their prey in the dark. The creatures are said to have originated over 400 million years ago during the Silurian times, but because of today's overfishing, they're usually a big target, particularly in coastal waters. These creatures are essential to the deep sea ecosystem. They tend to live up to 30 years old, and they also reach sexual maturity late and produce few young, so being a target to fisheries is a huge issue for them. If you're ever going scuba diving, I would beware of the predatory creatures, but thankfully they tend to reside in the deep sea, but they are found in oceans all throughout the world except in Antarctica. And finally, in at number 1 we have garbage. One of the most terrifying on this list is the amount of garbage in our oceans. Garbage is ugly, and it is a threat to all of us on land and especially those living in the oceans. Whenever you go to a beach, no matter in your hometown or on the other side of the world on vacation, you have probably seen some sort of garbage or debris floating in the water or on the beach. The amount of waste in our oceans have created islands of trash that collect into massive piles that float on the surface. One of the most notorious ones is the Great Pacific Patch, or the Trash Vortex, which spans from the west coast of North America to Japan. Last year it was recorded that there are about 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic waste in our oceans, and studies expect this number to triple in the next 2 decades if no significant action is taken. When researchers and divers traveled down to the deepest part of the ocean, which was a record depth, there was one thing that was so unexpected that they saw. This expedition was done by American undersea explorer Victor Vescovo, who was the first person to dive to the deepest points of the Earth's ocean, traveling over 35,000 feet, and is the deepest manned sea dive ever recorded. During his dive, he discovered something truly terrifying and completely unexpected. In the deepest part of the ocean, where no one has ever traveled, a plastic bag was found. Not only are there large pieces of plastic and garbage in our oceans, but it's the microplastic and the remains of trash that are still composting that are more threatening to marine life than anything, because they can quickly enter and poison the creatures living in our oceans and even people. The ocean is vital to our survival, and the amount of garbage and plastic found in our oceans is baffling, and we as humans need to make some serious changes. Coming in at number 5, we have stranded ship. In Zakynthos, Greece, on the beautiful beaches lays a haunting sight of a stranded and rusting MV Panagiotis ship washed up on the shore in 1980 and continues to lay on the sand to this day. Many tourists come to view this phenomenon, and due to the mysterious ship, it's been nicknamed Shipwreck Beach. Little is known about the ship and is highly debated. One theory is that the ship was used for smuggling and abandoned when the crew were being pursued by the Navy on their way to Piraeus from Albania. Another theory states that the ship was making its way from Turkey with a freight of contraband cigarettes headed for Italy. When encountering stormy weather, the ship went into a cove where the crew abandoned the ship in fear of getting caught. Soon after the ship was abandoned, rumors started swirling that the ship had many valuable items on it, and authorities eventually convicted 29 people for looting cargo and valuable equipment from the wrecked ship. The location of the Panagiotis was prominently featured in the hit Korean drama Descendants of the Sun, leading to a surge of interest among Chinese and Korean tourists. This beach was briefly closed for tourists in 2018 due to the fear of landslides due to a large boulder falling onto the beach, but left the ship unharmed. The beach was later opened, and that same year the beach was named as the world's best beach in a poll by over 1,000 travel journalists and professionals. The beach and surrounding areas are stunning, but the mystery of the ship lingers and gives creepy vibes when you're on vacation in such a beautiful place. Some tourists have stated while getting close to the ship they've heard noises coming from inside, and some locals believe that this ship is haunted by the past crew members. In at number 4, we have numerous lost cities. One of the most famous lost cities that have been located in the ocean is the lost city of Atlantis. The lost city used to actually consist of a few islands where the founders had created a utopian civilization and became a great naval power. Their home consisted of concentric islands separated by wide moats and linked by a canal. The island of gods contained gold, silver, and other precious metal, and had an abundance of rare and exotic wildlife. Many believe Atlantis and the story behind it was a fictional story that was created by an ancient Greek philosopher Plato, but others believe it was a real story and that the lost city is supposedly located in the Atlantic Ocean, while others say it's the Mediterranean or under Antarctica, and this is a popular debate. Besides the highly debated Atlantis, there are currently at least a dozen lost cities that rest at the bottom of the ocean near places like Greece, Japan, and India. The sunken palace of Cleopatra is one of the most fabled underwater remnants of the ancient world. It had sunken more than 1400 years ago when an earthquake and tsunami hit Alexandria, Egypt. One of the most spectacular and intact lost cities is Xicheng, or otherwise known as the Lion City, which is located at the bottom of China's Quandiao Lake. Not from ancient times, but apparently it was purposely flooded in 1959 to make room for a dam and an adjoining hydroelectric station. Another lost city comes from Dwarka, India, which is known as the Gateway to Heaven, which was an ancient city dating back as far back as 574 AD. The ancient Dwarka was sunken by the rising of the ocean levels and taken to the bottom of the sea at the Gulf of Cambay. Marine archaeological explorations have shed light on the structures and other artifacts these ancient people lived in. Many things have been seen and recovered, like ancient structures, grids, pillars, stone anchors, pottery, stone sculptures, bronze, copper, and so much more. In at number 3, a suspected UFO. In 2011, a group of Swedish divers discovered a mysterious object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, which is a part of the Atlantic Ocean. The divers that were exploring the sea floor that came across the UFO-shaped object had their equipment stop working as they approached the object. Professional diver Stephen Hogenberg, who is part of the Ocean X team, said that some of the team's cameras and satellite phones refused to work when directly above the object and would only work when they were at least 200 meters away from the so-called UFO. The Swedish diving team noted there was a 985-foot flattened out runway leading up to the object, implying that it skidded along the path before stopping. Member Dennis Asberg said, "I am 100% convinced and confident that we have found something that is very, very, very unique." Many of the divers were convinced that their finding was in fact a UFO, but some added theories that maybe the object could have been a meteorite or an asteroid, a volcano, or a U-boat from the Cold War, but no one was really sure. The divers had returned to the site the next year to get a better look at the anomaly and had in fact found a second object near the first finding. They had taken a sonar image of the new finding due to mysterious electrical interference. It wasn't much of a clear image, and the group had only released the original finding image because the second finding was so blurry. With only a single blurry image and little information, many speculate that the object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea could in fact be a UFO, a portal into another world, or even an underwater Stonehenge. The theories received more attention when artist Hawk Vact had created a 3D interpretation of the mysterious object, which looks eerily similar to a UFO or something not of this world. On December 10, 2014, the website Earth We Are One actually published an article claiming a UFO shaped like a Millennium Falcon from Star Wars had been discovered at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and explained more about the dive and findings. We may never really know what this mysterious object truly is, and many believe it might be, but others believe it could be something else, but no one really knows. In at number 2, we have giant eyeball. In 2012, a giant eyeball was found by a beachcomber in Pompano Beach in Florida, and this discovery is baffling wildlife officials. The softball-sized eyeball was reported to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and then sent to the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute in St. Petersburg to be put on ice, so further analysis could be done to try and figure out what sea creature this eyeball had come from. Marine biologists will use genetic testing to try and solve this mystery and try and find an answer. When the picture came out of this mysterious eyeball, the internet went crazy, and the mystery eyeball soon went viral, and some have suggested that the eye came from a monster fish, a giant squid, or even a whale. Many people are leaning towards the eyeball is from a giant squid, but the spokeswoman for the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute, Carly Segelson, said they are leaning toward a different scenario. The primary suspect right now would be a large fish like a swordfish, a tuna, or some sort of deep water fish species. Heather Bracken-Grissom, an assistant professor in the marine science program at Florida International University in Miami, believed that this huge blue eyeball may have come from a deep sea squid or a large swordfish. The professor and her colleagues concluded that the eyeball's lens and pupil are similar in shape to that of a deep sea squid, and noted that a deep sea squid's eyeball can be as large as a soccer ball and can easily become dislodged. After the marine biologist's test came back, they were still left with not many answers of what creature this eyeball came from, but it was determined to have bone fragments around it, debunking the theory of it being from a giant squid. Many different parts of different sea creatures have washed up or have been discovered by divers, but soon determined by marine biologists to be a specific sea creature or species, but this eyeball continues to be a mystery. This story just proves that we know very little about the ocean and who or what is swimming down there, especially in the deepest depths of the sea. And finally, in at number 1, we have Icicle of Death, or better known as the icy finger of death. It creeps through the ocean's depth like a frozen eel, an eerie phenomenon known as brine icicles. Brinesicles are most commonly called the icicles of death. It freezes everything it touches. Only discovered in the 1960s, these things grow towards the sea floor from the base of the Arctic and Antarctica sea ice. This phenomenon happens when extremely cold brine sink to the bottom of the water, reaching warmer seawater below. The water around it flash freezes, creating a descending tube of ice known as a brinacle. Sometimes an underwater icicle reaches the seafloor, and when it does, a web of ice forms and spreads, entombing and freezing everything in its path, including any unlucky sea life such as a starfish and sea urchins. Andrew Thurber, professor at Oregon State University, an avid diver, had actually seen a brinacle bloom firsthand and stated, "They look like an upside-down cacti that are blown from glass, like something from Dr. Seuss's imagination. They're incredibly delicate and can break with only the slightest touch." The formation of a brinacle was first filmed in 2011 by producer Catherine Jeffs and cameraman Hugh Miller and Doug Anderson for the BBC series Frozen Planet. They can even create brine pools, which are called the Black Pool of Death, and are toxic to marine animals due to their high salinity and anoxic properties, which can lead to toxic shock and possibly death. Based on what scientists have learned so far, they believe life on Earth may have originated from these tentacles, and that they may even harbour conditions suitable for life to form on other planets and moons.